Chapter 675. The underworld river creatures swarmed forward, charging straight at the roaring Chonyo. All sorts of weapons and spells flew out. On the other side, Chonyo seemed to have realized that the mental influence of the aberrations was unable to affect these black-skinned monsters. He could only let out another roar and charge forward while enduring the various weapons and spells attacking him. When the aberrations fought with other creatures, their greatest advantage was that they could constantly infect their opponents with their mental influence, turning them into aberrations as well. But to the underworld river creatures, the mental influence of the aberrations was completely ineffective. Even when the experts of the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas encountered an aberration, they would unleash their strongest state to end the battle as quickly as possible, even if the opponent's realm was far inferior to theirs. Furthermore, even if the battle only lasted for a second, the participants of the battle would be thrown into special prisons by the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas after the battle. They would also undergo regular psychological assessments and do not need face-to-face projection observation. But after losing this special mental influence ability, the aberrations did not seem to have anything special apart from looking a little disgusting. It seems that the aberration's trick is ineffective. The corners of Lin Yuan's mouth curled up slightly as he muttered softly. The underworld river creatures had their own memories, but they did not have individual minds and judgment. Everything they carried out came from the will of the underworld river, which was the orders given to them by Lin Yuan. Just as the saying went, only those who did not enter the battlefield were the true winners. Therefore, when the mental influence met the underworld river creatures without individual minds, it was equivalent to meeting a nemesis. If he wanted to mentally infect these underworld river creatures, it meant that he had to infect the entire underworld river. On a material level, the aberrations had to break through the blockade of the underworld river creatures and kill their way to Lin Yuan. Then, they had to infect Lin Yuan, the carrier of the underworld river. Only then would it be considered complete. But Lin Yuan's good mood did not last long. The mental influence ability was indeed ineffective against the underworld river creatures. However, these underworld river creatures were not experts when they were alive. At most, they were some late-stage mountain lords or existences that had just entered the desolate demon realm. Against a titled demon king like Chonyo, they were nothing more than food. Furthermore, after Chonyo had been transformed into an aberration, he did not seem to have the ability to cast spells like when he fought Blood Lady. However, his physical strength had obviously increased by a large margin. Clearly, this was the benefit of the aberration. In front of Chonyo, regardless of their realm, the underworld river creatures were killed in one move. These underworld river creatures could not be killed, and even if they died, they would quickly condense the water of the underworld river. However, Lin Yuan could clearly see that the battle formation formed by the creatures of the underworld river was being penetrated by Chonyo little by little. Even if these creatures of the underworld river did not have the slightest fear and stepped forward to die, they could not make Chonyo retreat half a step. On the contrary, Chonyo took advantage of the opportunity of the creatures of the underworld river to constantly approach the prison where Lin Yuan was. In the prison cell. Through Lin Yuan's projection, the expressions of the fish-head man and the warden changed. They opened their mouths, but no one said anything. However, Lin Yuan could acutely sense that these two beasts had already made a decision. However, at this juncture, the underworld river creatures were blocking Chonyo's advance. Thus, it was difficult for them to make a decision in a short period of time. However, including Lin Yuan, the only three existences in this prison who might still be alive knew that this was their only way out. As for why they were the only three, it was actually very easy to explain. The underworld river creatures seemed to have already known of Chonyo's appearance. After they silently set up a battle formation on the path that Chonyo had to pass through, the bug-formed fellow seemed to have realized that Lin Yuan had been watching its actions. Then, it used some unknown method to temporarily block the eye of God's prying. Although Lin Yuan could still see the scene outside, he could not see anything that was alive. Including the bug man, Blood Lady, and the prison guards and prisoners in the prison, all of them had disappeared from the eye of God's gaze. Currently, Lin Yuan could only sense Chonyo's existence through the shared vision of the underworld river creatures. However, this was an underwater prison after all. There were experts sent by the West Sea Dragon Palace, as well as the leader of the 9 sons of the Dragon Palace. This meant that Lin Yuan's existence was highly valued by the West Sea Dragon Palace. Thus, other than the necessary protective measures, there might be countless pairs of eyes secretly watching every move in this underwater prison. Blood Lady's arrival, Chonyo's mutation, unknown lurkers, these things would soon be reported to the West Sea Dragon Palace, and would attract terrifying experts from the Dragon Palace. Lin Yuan knew this, so he was not willing to personally face a mid-stage demon king. Moreover, the other party might have the means to mutate him. Mutated body. This was the only thing that Lin Yuan knew that could threaten him. The body of a puppet was not afraid of swords, spears, and was not afraid of water or fire. After all, it was an inanimate object, so it did not have any weaknesses or vital points. However, this kind of mental pollution would affect Lin Yuan's divine mind. Although this divine mind was like the divine mind attached to the statue in the Blackwater Dragon King Temple in the northern frontier, it was not cut out by Lin Yuan and given a certain degree of autonomy, so Lin Yuan could order this divine mind to dissipate at any time without returning to the divine mind of the main body and affecting Lin Yuan's main body. However, in that case, Lin Yuan could not release his main body from the beast pouch before the divine mind dissipated. He could only wait until the beast pouch lost its effect before regaining his freedom. However, that also meant that Lin Yuan would have to pay 5 to 10 years. Who knew what kind of hell the endless sea would be by then? Perhaps the sea area, including the outer sea, would have become a place where the mutated body ran rampant. Therefore, Lin Yuan had to hold on until the West Sea Dragon Palace realized that the prison was out of their control, and before they sent enough experts to solve the problem. Before that, if the mutated body really rushed in front of him, not to mention whether Lin Yuan would be affected, it was equivalent to losing to these mutated bodies. Moreover, there was also the mysterious Bugman, which made Lin Yuan even more afraid. That guy was really terrifying. Chonyo, as the head of the top fighting sequence of the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas, would definitely play the role of a firefighter in such a dangerous situation. Whether the opponent was a mutated body or a sea monster, it was his battlefield. Chapter 676. This meant that an existence like Chonyo had an iron-like will. It could ignore the disgusting appearance of the aberrations and ignore the resistance that was constantly ringing in its ears. It could even suppress the curiosity of all living creatures and deal with the aberrations completely. However, in a short period of time, Chonyo was defeated by the Bugman and was quickly infected into an aberration. It became a steel knife hanging over Lin Yuan's head. The Nether River creatures would not be affected by the aberrations because they did not have their own minds. However, Lin Yuan was different. Even if he was the carrier of the Nether River and the future Nether God, he still had his own thoughts and emotions. It was hard to say if he could maintain his normal mind when encountering such a strange mental infection. Moreover, it was from the Bugman, which was obviously more terrifying in its infection ability. It was just as Lin Yuan had predicted. The Bugman should also know that the West Ocean Dragon Palace would soon notice what was happening here. Excluding the time that the West Ocean Dragon Palace needed to gather experts and rush over to deal with the abnormality here, it did not have much time left. No matter what the Bugman's original goal was, it would quickly complete it before the experts from the Dragon Palace arrived. It would not waste any time. Therefore, in this underwater prison, other than the 3 monsters in the prison and the Nether River creatures outside, the rest of the existences had been infected by the Bugman and became aberrations. Although these small fries would become stronger after becoming aberrations, it was impossible for them to break through the defense line of the Nether River creatures and rush to Lin Yuan. However, there was no doubt that the pressure from behind would be shared by Chonyo, which would speed up Chonyo's advance. At the same time, there was even more bad news. Blood Lady, who was already good at using the powerful bodies of monsters and did not hesitate to give up on strengthening herself with spells, would undoubtedly become more terrifying after being infected into an aberration. Even the aberrated Chonyo might not be her match. There was no reason for the Bugman to let go of such a powerful combat power. Therefore, Lin Yuan would soon have to face the joint attack of Blood Lady and Qionyou. Moreover, the resurrected Nether River creatures would be entangled with the aberrations that the jailers and prisoners had turned into. They would not be able to go forward and delay the advance of the Nether River creatures. The defense line was in danger. What the F***ck, Lin Yuan rolled his eyes at the fish head. If this guy hadn't been overly cautious, the Nether River creatures would have joined forces with the other prisoners when Blood Lady clashed with the warden today. That would have been the perfect opportunity for him to escape. But now, Qionyou was here. As the stabilizing force in the fish-headed man's eyes, Qionyou perfectly acted out his role as a savior to the fish-headed man. If only Blood Lady had been infected, Lin Yuan would not have been so pessimistic. After all, the creatures of the underworld river were notoriously difficult to deal with. No matter how crazy the Bugman was, it couldn't go into battle personally. That would risk being dragged into the battle by the creatures of the underworld river. By the time the powerhouses of the Dragon Palace arrived, it would be killed on the spot even if it had 3 heads and 6 arms. As expected, more and more aberrations appeared in the projection from the perspective of the creatures of the underworld river. Although their original appearances could no longer be seen, the warden could still recognize the original identities of these aberrations at a glance through some of their physical characteristics and the uniform numbers they wore. What was even more suffocating for them was that someone who looked like an overseer was obviously standing behind the new aberrations. Even though she had grown a pair of broken bat wings and twisted tentacles all over her head, the 3 demon beasts inside the cell still recognized her real identity very quickly. She was Blood Lady. The fish-headed man's face could no longer remain calm. He immediately straightened his body and said in a deep voice, "Black Jiao, I know that you have the means to turn normal creatures into those black-skinned creatures that can't be killed no matter how hard you try. I've already thought it through. Those guys outside are at most in the desolate demon realm. Even if they die 1,000 times, they won't be able to stop Qionyou and Blood Lady, so please turn me into that kind of monster." The warden's slightly high-pitched voice sounded, directly interrupting the fish-headed man's words. The fish-headed man was slightly stunned. He looked at the warden in disbelief. "What are you looking at me for? This is my prison. Now that there's a problem with the prison I'm in charge of, do you think that I, as the warden, will be spared? You should know that the Dragon Palace of the 4 Seas has been doing their best to hide the existence of the aberrations. This is because once the monsters that are dissatisfied with the Dragon Palace find out about the existence of the aberrations, they will very likely run to the continent without any reason. The entire Dragon Palace of the 4 Seas will become a sacrifice for their escape. The Tianwu continent is already under the control of humans. They won't allow the monsters to steal their territory. The subordinates of the Dragon Palace haven't even evolved a human-like body, let alone transformed. So when the time comes, there will definitely be a war. The entire Tianwu continent will be caught in a long war that could last for hundreds of years. That's something that no one wants to see. Even if the Dragon Palace of the 4 Seas believes in my loyalty, they will still get rid of me just in case. Isn't that right?" The warden said helplessly as he patted his own face. Although his words were very pessimistic, it did make sense if one thought about it carefully. It was just like how the Xinwu dynasty wanted to kill Luo Su in order to hide the fact that the sky demon had turned into a purgatory creature. The reason why the Dragon Palace of the 4 Seas hid the existence of the aberrations was not simply to let the subordinates of the Dragon Palace of the 4 Seas become scapegoats or punching bags to delay the aberrations. It was because once the existence of the aberrations was announced, the order of the Endless Sea would instantly disappear. At that time, whether it was the sea or the land, it would become a battlefield for all sides to fight and kill each other. If it was only within the Tianwu continent, it wouldn't matter. Lin Yuan was not against war. It could even be said that every war could make the northern frontier stronger. The soldiers would become more elite, and the civilians would cherish their current lives more. Even those who were originally against the northern frontier would all move to the northern frontier's territory to contribute to the development of the northern frontier. But if this war would cause the entire Tianwu continent to be in chaos for hundreds of years, that would be a different matter. The cultivators of the Tianwu continent only treated the things outside the gate of heaven as monsters, but Lin Yuan was very clear what they were. He also knew that once the Tianwu continent fell, the natives of this world would only be enslaved by Hung Jun and his subordinates. But as an existence chosen by the heavenly Tao, there was no way for him to survive. Chapter 677. If that's the case, the fish-headed man laughed bitterly and said, "Turn me into one of those things. I've already made up my mind." Creatures that had never died would not understand how terrifying death was. That was because at their level, death might be a form of release. However, to those nether river creatures, death was undoubtedly the most terrifying existence in the world. They were constantly trying to please Lin Yuan. Even if they had to violate some of the restrictions in their bloodline, they still hoped to gain Lin Yuan's favor and be truly released one day. However, Lin Yuan did not have the ability to do so. Just like in those myths, every god had their own scope of power. You could not expect Gong Gong to create a fireball for you with his bare hands. Although Lin Yuan was the main god of the northern frontier and the divine king of the northern frontier god system, the divine power to control everything was only theoretically possible. It was the same as the previous explanation. In this incomplete world, even if Lin Yuan was the only god of the underworld, he did not have the ability to send others into reincarnation. The underworld did not exist in this world. Even with the appearance of Lin Yuan, the underworld of this world was just a seedling of the trickling Styx River. Other than the Styx River, the underworld could not even bear a fragile soul. Naturally, it was impossible to put it into use. As the bearer of the Nether River, he would become the lord of the underworld sooner or later and possess the absolute authority of the god of the underworld. However, that was only a matter of time. As the creator of the underworld, Lin Yuan could only use the only ability of the Nether Realm's black water to turn living creatures into undying Nether River creatures and control them to do whatever he wanted. Sure. Lin Yuan grinned. He had no intention of persuading them. He knew very well what these two demonic kings would experience. However, what did that have to do with him? He wasn't the kind of person who would sigh, "I didn't kill Boren, but Boren died because of me." Putting aside his hypocrisy, if these two early-stage demon kings were to become immortal and indestructible Netherworld River creatures, they wouldn't be much inferior to the strengthened Chionyo and Blood Lady. After all, they were all in the demon king stage. Even if there was a gap in strength, it was unlikely that they would be killed in one move. Also, without the worry that they might die, they would only become more efficient battle weapons after their emotions were deprived by the Mingi. They would be able to exert about 120% of their strength. As soon as he finished speaking, the pitch-black Nether Realm black water had already enveloped the two Demon King Realm demonic beasts. At the same time, Lin Yuan's divine sense was also dispirited, like a candle flame in the wind, with the possibility of being extinguished at any time. After all, the underworld black water is not something that can appear with a casual wave of the hand. It needs Lin Yuan's soul and demonic power as nourishment to slowly breed. The specific amount produced is directly linked to Lin Yuan's self-cultivation to improve his strength. Otherwise, the regression of cultivation base or even the fall of a realm is just a matter of an instant. Of course, Lin Yuan could also use the attribute points obtained from killing creatures to pay the price of breeding the Nether Realm black water. However, the requirements were just as harsh. For example, the Nether Realm black water couldn't instantly kill a Demon King realm existence, but Lin Yuan forced himself to pay the price of his remaining free attribute points to breed it. However, this was still not enough. There were two realms between the Mountain Lord realm and the Demon King realm. For the current stage where increasing one level required a large amount of attribute points, Lin Yuan even felt that the difference between the two of them was more than 100,000 attribute points. With the few thousand attribute points he had, it was far from enough. Lin Yuan had no choice but to use another function that wasn't worth it. He had to convert Joss Flames into free attribute points to maintain this intense consumption so that his realm wouldn't drop. 1 point of Joss Flames could be exchanged for 3,000 free attribute points. It seemed quite impressive, but it was obvious that exchanging Joss Flames for attribute points was a loss. The Joss Flames he had were all attributeless. In other words, even if he used them to strengthen himself, there wouldn't be any bonuses other than increasing his realm. However, if he used the Joss Flames that could do impossible things in other aspects, it would be far more worth it than exchanging them for attribute points. For example, if 100 points of Joss Flames could allow Lin Yuan to enter the 9th level of the Mountain Lord realm, if he used these 100 points of Joss Flames to exchange for a high-grade Fey to devour and refine, then it was very likely that he would obtain a similar amount of attribute points. Apart from this, he could also eat other benefits that belong to high-grade Fays, such as bloodline evolution, physical strengthening, or obtaining a good state for a certain period of time. Outside the prison cell, the Bugman looked coldly at the aberrations and nether river creatures that were constantly killing each other. There was a faint smile on its coarse face. It didn't seem to be in a hurry to drag Lin Yuan out of the prison cell, nor did it care about the aberrations' lives. It didn't give up and directly leave this dangerous place where Dragon Palace experts could appear at any time. It only watched with interest as the nether river creatures that were fighting with the aberrations were constantly torn apart, reformed, and then torn apart again. If Lin Yuan came out, he could even see that the Bugman's mouth was secreting sparkling liquid as if it was a customer who had seen a delicacy. Boom! The prison cell's door was directly blasted apart. The warden, whose skin had turned pitch black, and the fish-head man walked out confidently. When they looked at the aberrations, the 2 middle-level staff from the Dragon Palace didn't have any fluctuations in their eyes. It was as if those ferocious aberrations were illusions. Only a monster could defeat another monster. After being transformed into the creatures of the underworld river, although they had lost their freedom and soul, they had obtained the characteristics of immortality. Even if they were evaporated on the spot, as long as Lin Yuan still existed in the world, they could be reborn continuously. Middle-grade demon kings and titled demon kings were just trash. In their eyes, even the ferocious and terrifying aberrations were just trash that should be dragged into the nether river to suffer. The warden and the fish-head man looked at each other and didn't say anything. They very tacitly rushed toward the aberrated Xiao Niu and Blood Lady, restoring the situation to a strange balance once again. After all, when facing monsters that couldn't be killed, the difference of a small level was really not decisive. Even if the 2 of them were killed countless times, they would be able to recover in the blink of an eye. Chapter 678. Seeing the 2 mid-stage Demon King aberrations being beaten back, the smile on the insectoid's face grew even wider. The smile on Bugman's face widened, but he had no intention of attacking. He only said in a deep voice, "Black Dragon, I have no ill intentions towards you. I'm only here today because my boss ordered me to let you out. Since the last guard here has been turned into your subordinate, then my purpose here has been achieved. Goodbye." As soon as it finished speaking, the insectoid turned around and left without any reluctance. However, after taking a few steps, the insectoid suddenly stopped and said with a frown, "I almost forgot. My boss said that you only need to accept my help. Someone will pay him for you. Also, he said that you 2 are colleagues. Saving you is just a task given by my boss." "Save me? Boss? Colleague?" Lin Yuan's head was buzzing. Whether it was in his previous life or this life, he did not have a boss. If he had to think about it, he did work as a mercenary or an assassin in his previous life when he was sharpening his skills for revenge. However, Lin Yuan did not think that a boss of that level would have the ability to affect the other world. To put it bluntly, if he encountered a monster like the insectoid in his previous life, the only choice was to use nuclear weapons to solve the problem. So, was it the system's doing? As an incomplete heavenly axiom, the system obviously had its own will. However, it was obvious that the system was like a pre-programmed program most of the time. If it judged that Lin Yuan was not strong enough to fight against the West Ocean Dragon Palace, or even escape from this underwater prison, then it would not be impossible for it to give other seeds some tasks to save Lin Yuan out of respect for the seed that was Lin Yuan. Although he did not know how the seed that accepted the task released the monster like the insectoid, it did not seem to be a problem with the help of the system. Whether it was Lin Yuan or the bird that was used to warn Lin Yuan, they all proved that the system had enough power to fight against the will of this world. As long as it did not affect the operation of this world, it did not seem to be a big problem for the system to insert some thugs into this world. After all, the seeds were all in different worlds. It was a walk in the park for the system to smuggle life forms from one world to another. Furthermore, the Tianwu continent was a world derived from a fragment of the chaos world. From a certain perspective, the world will belong to the absolute lower level of the system. If it wasn't for the fact that most of the system was missing, it would have been normal for it to rub the will of the world against the ground. Is this your doing? The corner of Lin Yuan's mouth twitched slightly. To be safe, he decided to interrogate the system. Host, you should know that when the system makes a judgment, it is under the condition of absolute rationality, right? That's right. This system is certain that you have no chance of escaping this place on your own. The system did not mince its words. It did not even have the intention to save Lin Yuan's face. After all, to the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas, whose middle level was the Demon King, and whose top combat power was the True Dragon, both Lin Yuan and the Northern Frontier were ants that could be easily crushed. The Dragon Palace of the West Sea kept him alive only because they wanted to move to the mainland in the future, so they did not want to have too much of a conflict with the forces on the mainland. What about the aberrations? Lin Yuan asked again. He was really concerned about the aberrations. These things that could invisibly infect normal life forms into monsters through the mind could really destroy the world. They were countless times more troublesome than the Sky Demon. Even if the Sky Demon, who was known for his immortality, encountered these aberrations, there was a high chance that he would be affected. Then, the aberrations in his nature would be infinitely magnified, and he would become an indescribable monster without a physical body. Aberrations? That's not something I created. To be precise, they were revived because of you. This time, the system did not ignore Lin Yuan for a while. Instead, it quickly made an explanation, as if there was a great cause and effect behind this matter, a cause and effect that even the system did not want to bear. Because of me? Revived? Lin Yuan muttered. This was his first time in the Endless Sea. Other than the time when he was floating in the outer sea, he had been staying in the underwater prison. He did not even have a chance to properly communicate with the prisoners and the prison guards. But here in the Endless Sea, it seemed that the aberrations were very active. Therefore, Lin Yuan did not think that these aberrations had anything to do with him at all. Although I can't hear your thoughts, we have been together for almost 2 years. Looking at your expression, I know that you must be thinking that these aberrations have nothing to do with you, right? You had a strange divine clan in your past life called Cthulhu. Forget it, with how ignorant you are, I don't think you've heard of this famous evil divine clan. The system silently mocked. Lin Yuan was speechless. Lin Yuan was silent for a moment before he slowly said, although I don't know much, I do know what Cthulhu is. But that's just something made up in a novel in my past life. As he spoke, Lin Yuan became silent again. Something written in a novel in my past life? Heavenly Axiom, Hung Jun, Gods, which one of these was not something written in a novel? In other words, those things that could destroy the world in a day and could even play with space and time as they wished really existed? The aberrations are indeed something similar to Cthulhu, but I can tell you clearly that they are not the ones you remember. In your past life, Cthulhu had another name, called the Great Old Dominators. This name is actually very appropriate to describe these monsters that appeared. At a certain point in time in this world, they were the so-called dominators and rulers. However, most of them lost to time, and after countless years of settling, they became the origin of the aberrations. They were gods in their own time, guides, and founders of civilization. However, in the current era, they are nothing but the remnants of an old era. Their past appearance can no longer be verified. Now, all of them have become aberrations of different forms. This is not their original appearance, but the arrival of a new era. They will always deliberately make those things of the old era ugly. Just like when you mentioned the primitive people in your past life, you would always associate them with words like beasts and imbeciles. But not many people know that in their original era, the primitive people stood at the top of the world in terms of intellectual development and various other aspects. That is why they are called the Great Old Dominators. Because they fell in the long river of time, they have long lost their divine names. Chapter 679. The Great Old Ones slumbered at the edge of the world, spying on the workings of this world and brewing calamities that could destroy the entire world. When they purged all life, they would reshape a new civilization, and there, they would regain their identities as gods, guides, and enlighters, reclaiming everything they had lost. Therefore, the founders of every new era will be attacked by the Great Old Ones. However, without exception, the new civilization will always be the victorious one. Without exception, they will use new technology and greater wisdom to eliminate the Great Old Ones and continue the transformation of the new era. But history is always surprisingly similar. When the new era reaches a certain level of strength, they will start wars and internal strife. Even if it is to fight for something they don't care about, they will fight without hesitation. Therefore, after war, cleansing, and restoration, a new era will descend. The masters of the new era will walk the same path as their predecessors, and the masters of the old era will walk the same path as the Great Old Ones. They will awaken at the right time and transform into the new Cthulhu. They will once again challenge the leaders of the new era and be completely eliminated. Ridiculous, isn't it? The founders of the new era will never expect that one day, they will also become the monsters they destroyed. But if they remain stagnant and don't push forward the arrival of the new era, the Great Old Ones will make them pay the price in blood, forcing them to continue pushing forward and changing the era. So, the appearance of these Great Old Ones isn't because of me at all. It's because of you, who don't know the immensity of heaven and earth, who opened the curtains of the new era on your own before you're strong enough. That's why these Great Old Ones woke up one after another and planned to take back everything that belongs to them. The aberrant, Cthulhu, the Great Old Ones. Lin Yuan felt as if he had heard something terrible. He always felt that his head had turned into paste, as if his whole person could not function at all. He was like an animal caught in a swamp, and he could only accept the terrifying ending in despair. The system's explanation sounded very strange. It was like, a dragon slayer eventually became an evil dragon. This kind of adult fairy tale-like plot was very nonsensical, but Lin Yuan had seen the answer before. The arrival of any new era was bound to be because the old era and the old order could no longer allow them to survive in the new era. Therefore, as long as it was related to the old era, it would all be labeled as destruction. Every era was like this. When the era changed, the founder of the old era would change from a god to a monster. Is this the origin of the Great Old Ones? To Lin Yuan, this was obviously not good news. Because of the appearance of the northern frontier, Lin Yuan could be said to be the existence of a new era. When he defeated the feudalism of this world, the trajectory of the world would develop in the direction of his previous life. When the potential of this world was exhausted, a new era would come again. At that time, Lin Yuan would become a demon, a monster, a monster, a monster, a monster, a monster, or a snake god in countless stories. Perhaps one day in the future, Lin Yuan would also begin to mutate and become one of the Great Old Ones. This seemed to be an endless cycle. Ever since the appearance of the northern frontier, Lin Yuan had embarked on a path that was destined to become one of the Great Old Ones. The existence or destruction of the northern frontier was no longer important to Lin Yuan. A towering tree would eventually rot and fall one day, and at that time, Lin Yuan would turn from a god of the northern frontier to a monster like the Great Old Ones. Unless, Lin Yuan wanted to say something but hesitated. Unless you can defeat time and become a true immortal existence. You can firmly control this world and make it always operate according to your ideas. No matter how the era changes, you will always be the one who creates the era, and not a sad existence whose name has been forgotten and whose language has been obliterated by time. Tie the word ruler to you and never mention the great old ones. Lin Yuan appeared in Lin Yuan's mind like a demon tempting humans to fall. I refuse. Lin Yuan narrowed his eyes slightly and said in a deep voice, in the end, this is the story of a dragon slayer becoming an evil dragon. It's just that at that time, whether I'm an evil dragon or a dragon slayer depends on my mood, and it won't affect me in the slightest, will it? The system once again used its silence skill. The sneer on Lin Yuan's face deepened. He wasn't resisting the so-called ruler, but simply felt that if he followed the system's train of thought, his death might not be far away. Whether it was the strange bird from before or the bugmen that appeared out of nowhere, it meant that the system was willing to cooperate with him, but only because it thought highly of his potential and believed that he had the ability to compete with or even win against Hung Jun. However, the heavenly axiom only hoped that Lin Yuan would help it overthrow Hung Jun's rule over the great old world. It definitely didn't want him to become the next Hung Jun. So far, Hung Jun was the only one who had succeeded in grasping the throat of the era and making everything run in the direction he planned. The so-called eternal ruler's path seemed to be the only one who had succeeded. Add to that the system's loathing of Hung Jun, and Lin Yuan felt that if he nodded, there was a good chance he'd die on the spot. What you say makes a lot of sense, but I don't believe it. Lin Yuan narrowed his eyes slightly and said in a deep voice, the aberrant may be the kind of thing you are talking about, but I have seen that these aberrants in front of me were created by another host. It is not appropriate for you to forcibly put the blame on me, right? A cold glint flashed in his slightly narrowed eyes. The system's occasional probing meant that it was still investigating Lin Yuan, constantly considering whether or not Lin Yuan could become the next Hung Jun. This also meant that even with their current partnership, the system could still grasp Lin Yuan's weakness and dispose of Lin Yuan at any time. But, why? Lin Yuan didn't rely on the system to strengthen himself anymore. He'd accumulated more than a dozen chances to draw skills, but Lin Yuan still hadn't drawn skills to expand his skill pool. He relied more on the use of his innate abilities to derive various skills. If it wasn't necessary, Lin Yuan wouldn't even use the skills he'd already drawn. So, what other methods could the system use to threaten him? If the will of the world was dissatisfied, could it shove in another host, or send a fighter like the Bugman to directly eliminate Lin Yuan by force? Or could it be that the abilities the system gave him had other flaws? For example, it could deprive him of his abilities at any time? Chapter 680. The appearance of the great old ones is because the curtain of the new era has been lifted. Do you think that other than you, there is someone else who has started a new era in the Tianwu continent? The appearance of these aberrations is indeed not because of you. It was the fellow outside who told them the truth of the world. There is a limit to the brain capacity of any living creature. Once they know something that they cannot understand and force themselves to understand, they will collapse on their own. If they are lucky, they will become so-called vegetative people. If they are unlucky, they will become aberrations and then go crazy. They will keep telling you everything they know, which is what the demonic beast told you before, the unknown whispers in your ears. If you try to understand these whispers, even if you don't understand their language, you can smoothly follow the guidance and know everything you want to know. Then, you will become an aberration and become a member of the Great Old One's camp. Among the opponents you have encountered, the purgatory creatures are the fallen ones who are caused by excessive negative emotions. The users of the elixir of immortality are purely controlled by the medicine. However, the Great Old Ones are different from the previous two. They are sad people who know the truth but can't understand it. They are deformed monsters that have evolved from simple biological changes. What the Bugman outside did was to use a language that they could understand to tell them the truth of this world. Combined with the mental influence of the Great Old One, it made them unable to forget what they heard. Thus, they skipped the steps of exploration and directly turned them into aberrations. It's still the same sentence. There is a limit to the brain capacity of any living creature. You are actually completely immune to the mental influence of the great old ones. As the founder of the new era, you fully understand the shortcomings and bad habits of the old era. Even if you know what they are, you won't be afraid, let alone try to understand them. Otherwise, just based on what you learned from me, it would be enough to turn you into an aberration. Unfortunately, because you don't know when the new era you started will become an old era. Just like the natural evolution from the Stone Age, any new era will become an old era. And you, other than becoming an eternal existence, the only outcome is to become a member of the great old ones and then be destroyed by the founder of the new era. This is the inevitable result of the evolution of the era. The system appeared word by word in Lin Yuan's sea of consciousness, as if to emphasize the possibility of its words. Lin Yuan frowned and didn't reply. He did not think that he was immune to the mental infection of the great old ones. Even though he was well aware of the drawbacks and bad habits of the feudal system, he didn't dare to say that he understood it 100%. The reason why he decided to unveil the new era was that the world he lived in his previous life was incompatible with the feudal system. Moreover, as someone who had studied history, he could see what the correct answer was through the evolution of history. It was just that he had a bad hand, but he had no choice but to deal with the feudal forces. It was impossible for him to fight against a feudal dynasty. Even with the help of the demonic beasts, it was still not enough. Therefore, he could only pull most of the people in this world to his side to isolate and fight against the powerful dynasties. Who are you? Lin Yuan suddenly woke up and asked in a low voice. He suddenly realized something. There was something wrong with the system today. After his clumsy test was exposed, it didn't seem to be discouraged. Instead, it used more tempting words to lead him down the path of depravity, as if it desperately wanted him to become an existence like Hung Jun. When Lin Yuan raised his head again, he suddenly realized that a pair of huge eyes had appeared in front of him. It was a pair of strange eyes. In the dim, yellowish white of the eyes was a horizontal scarlet line. However, this pair of strange eyes seemed to have a strange magic. With just one look, Lin Yuan was pulled into a hellish fantasy. He saw the development of the northern frontier. He saw the 7 great dynasties being trampled under the feet of the northern frontier. A huge monster that unified the Tianwu continent was like an awakened dragon that raised its head and roared, its loud and clear voice piercing through the clouds. One by one, familiar faces turned into important figures, and they maintained the operation of this behemoth in an orderly manner. Everything was moving closer to Lin Yuan's understanding of his previous life. However, this beautiful scene only lasted for a moment. After who knew how many years later, those ambitious big shots finally couldn't resist the erosion of time and began to retire one after another. Thus, a new generation of leaders began to take their positions. Those with outstanding ability naturally had positions to occupy without doing anything. The huge monster that once shook the clouds began to decay and degenerate. The entire northern frontier became bloated. Countless reforms in the northern frontier era began to no longer adapt to this new world. However, the nobles who occupied positions without doing any work seemed to not realize this and continued to live their lives in a drunken stupor. Thus, a war broke out. A group of heroes that had the same characteristics as those important figures appeared one after another. New ideas and old ideas began to collide. The old doctrines were wiped clean. The so-called nobles once again ushered in the cycle of slaughter, just like the change of dynasties in Lin Yuan's memory. After that, a new regime began to be established. An era that was more in line with Lin Yuan's memory of his previous life appeared. It completely abandoned the rules that Lin Yuan had to set up because of his lack of strength and compromise with this world. On the day that the new era arrived, the huge monster no longer roared. The scales on its body began to fall off, revealing the disgusting cuticle underneath. The divine melody began to become even more bloated. A pair of stunted bat wings spread out from its back. Its hair and beard all turned into terrifying and strange wriggling tentacles. The huge dragon of the past had become a monster that was like Cthulhu. Those important figures once again awakened from their long slumber and became distorted monsters. They used their vocal organs to tell of their past glory, but they couldn't get the understanding of the world. The creatures of the new era treated them as monsters that must be eliminated. A new war began again. The monsters that the old rulers had evolved into were ultimately no match for the technology of the new era and were finally wiped out. In a certain corner of the world, Lin Yuan, who had completely transformed into a monster, let out an angry roar. He sank into the depths of the endless sea and entered a new round of slumber. He waited for the next era of change, trying to brew an even more terrifying apocalypse. Chapter 681. After watching these illusions, Lin Yuan's expression gradually turned solemn. It wasn't that he was frightened by those absurd scenes. He simply felt that if the era continued to develop, his regime, which was close to his previous life but had compromised with feudalism, would face such destruction. It was a very normal development. If he had not been mutated into a monster, Lin Yuan would not have found these illusions so difficult to accept. I really fell for it. In the illusion, the monster-like Lin Yuan muttered to himself. The mental influence of the aberrant still infected him. Unknowingly, it even deceived the system and directly affected his divine sense, resulting in a series of subsequent conversations that lured him into depravity. Boom! The next moment, the image collapsed, and the monster-like Lin Yuan suddenly exploded, turning into pieces of flesh and a rain of blood. In the darkness, Lin Yuan's indifferent voice sounded, "Although I don't know how long I will be imprisoned for, this grudge is settled between us. The great old ones, right? I will make you completely disappear from the universe. Just a strand of divine sense. How is this possible?" As Lin Yuan self-destructed in the illusion, the strange eyes exclaimed in amazement. Even the true dragon that it had infected and corrupted did not have such terrifying mental power, so it did not hesitate to attack, trying to destroy Lin Yuan, the leader who had opened the curtain of the new era, from the root. It wanted to strangle the new era in its cradle, and then become the existence that replaced Lin Yuan, taking back everything that belonged to the great old ones. However, as Lin Yuan self-destructed, it realized that it had only infected and corrupted a strand of divine sense. This grudge was really big. Ripples appeared in the void, and the huge pair of eyes slowly disappeared. A moment later, a golden light flickered, and a huge ball of light appeared in the place where Lin Yuan had been. He watched the disappearance of the pair of huge eyeballs indifferently. It was just a glimpse of each other, but the huge eyeballs flashed with panic and panic. It was something without a physical body, not a living creature, not a spiritual body, and did not even have a definite owner. However, the milky white ball of light was like everything in the world. No matter who saw it, they would feel that it was their own kind, and they would feel an unstoppable terrifying aura from it. Against such an existence, perhaps it would be completely annihilated in a single exchange. In the name of the heavenly axiom, I initiate a comprehensive mission. From now on, the host in the universe has triggered a mandatory mission: eliminate the great old ones. Mission Stage 1, opening the curtain of the new era. Mission participants, 9,318. Mission Stage 1 progress, 7%. After the mission progress reaches 100%, the next stage of the mission will begin. Mission time limit, 3 months. Mission completion reward, 1 major realm upgrade, 1 super cultivation technique, 200 million Joss flame power. Mission failure punishment, those who do not meet the requirements will be completely unbound by the system, and all system skills and models will be stripped. The great old one that had just left had undoubtedly touched the system's reverse scale, although it was not courting death to covet the system's power. However, it actually tried to infect Lin Yuan's body under the system's supervision, transforming Lin Yuan into a carrier that carried its will, becoming its agent in the mortal world. This kind of blatant act of stealing someone's corner was originally impossible, but Lin Yuan's current spirit and thoughts could completely prevent him from communicating with it, so that thing took advantage of the loophole just now. If it were any other host, the system would have already taken measures to deal with the invasion of the Great Old One. However, with Lin Yuan's uniqueness, it was only after Lin Yuan self-destructed that the system noticed the abnormality and began to investigate the abnormality. Only then did it find the Great Old One hidden in the void. The system rarely took the initiative to issue missions. In other words, after it chose a host, it would arrange a detailed growth plan to help the host stand at the top of a certain world as quickly as possible. Even if it was not the top, it could not be at the bottom of the food chain. At this point, the system would decide whether to continue to let the host live or to arrange a safer and more efficient mission plan based on the host's performance in the initial growth plan. As for the missions that all hosts could receive, that was just a concept. After all, the growth progress of each world's host was different from each world, as well as the host's own aptitude and personality. For example, Lin Yuan was an anomaly. Among the hosts chosen by the system, Lin Yuan's growth speed was definitely slow. At present, he could only obtain a short period of peace by using the tiger's skin. However, if they really fought, Lin Yuan was still an ant that the natives of this world could easily crush. However, Lin Yuan was an anomaly. According to the system's observation, he was the one with the most hope of defeating Hung Jun. Even the slow growth of Lin Yuan was due to him suppressing his own improvement. He was unwilling to let himself become a puppet controlled by the system. Until today, the two sides had maintained a cooperative relationship, rather than a relationship between a puppeteer and a puppet. Even if the system issued a compulsory mission, Lin Yuan had the capital to directly reject it. Because even if the system unbound him, he was confident that he could rely on himself to make a living in Tianwu world. Moreover, he had the same thoughts as Lin Yuan. He was very clear on how the hosts chosen by the system would grow. Therefore, after unbinding Lin Yuan, he had no choice but to give up on this world where the upper limit of strength was not low before Lin Yuan's death. Otherwise, if a new host appeared, Lin Yuan would have the ability to kill it. When they saw this compulsory mission, almost all the hosts were shocked and frightened. The system's rewards were very generous. Even if it was the first stage reward, it was enough to let many hosts soar to the sky. Just by following the path planned by the system and increasing their strength step by step, they were actually only powerful individuals. Even if they cultivated their own forces, their strength and influence were only average. They could barely maintain a foothold, let alone start a new era. The lack of strength was one aspect, but more importantly, they did not have any ideas. A feudal world could be changed according to Lin Yuan's memories from his previous life. But what if the world he was in was not much different from Lin Yuan's previous life? This mission, it was destined that a large number of hosts would ride the wind and rise. At the same time, it was also destined that a large number of hosts would lose the system's help and become ordinary creatures, or even disappear in the long river of time. Chapter 682. At the same time. Northern Frontier, Ministry of Works. A middle-aged man in a black uniform stood with his hands behind his back. His face was filled with astonishment. Based on the advanced technology of this world, the Ministry of Works of the Northern Frontier not only made a puppet body for Lin Yuan to use, but also made a system to locate the puppet's location and check the puppet's current condition. This was so that they could determine Lin Yuan's location at any time, and at the same time, understand the extent of damage to the puppet and what materials were needed to repair it. However, not long ago, a colleague in the Ministry of Works who was in charge of monitoring the puppets told him that the puppet body controlled by Lin Yuan had just lost its energy source. The so-called energy source was divine telekinesis. Simply using mental energy to control the puppet body was the same operation as injecting a soul. Putting aside the expensive materials needed to make the puppet body, even if they found cheaper materials to replace them later on, the Ministry of Works would not consider mass-producing the puppet body. This was because the injecting a soul step was too crucial. So far, Lin Yuan was the only one who could rely on his mental energy to control the puppet body as a perpetual motion machine. If the other higher-ups of the northern frontier wanted to use it, they would have to use an energy source that was even more expensive than the cost of the puppet body's materials. To give a simple example, if they used energy to control the puppet body, then a 30-minute battle would immediately consume more than half of the current liquid funds in the northern frontier. The northern frontier could not afford to burn this amount of money, so they placed great importance on the first-generation machine controlled by Lin Yuan. Has the information from the Association of the Demon Emperor come back? The middle-aged man's face was filled with seriousness. Although he did not have a blind worship of Lin Yuan, he was still grateful and cherished a person who had discovered his talents and was willing to give him a sufficient stage to display his talents. After all, most of the projects he had on hand were not as economical as the Great Wall Project and a series of other projects. He could be called the destroyer of the national treasury. Therefore, after losing Lin Yuan, the person who had discovered his talent, it was a problem whether he could still display his talent to his heart's content. Therefore, he had to consider the safety risks that Lin Yuan had not considered. For example, the issue of the beast pouch. The beast pouch was equipped with a self-destruct function. In other words, once Lin Yuan's divine sense that was controlling the puppet's body dissipated, the Northern Frontier's Ministry of Works could activate the self-destruct function of the beast pouch at any time and release Lin Yuan's original body. There was no need for Lin Yuan to be imprisoned in the beast pouch and wait for a long time to wake up on his own. But here was the problem. They could only monitor the state of the puppet's body, but they had no idea what was going on the other side. If Lin Yuan encountered a terrifying opponent and released his original form from the beast pouch, he wouldn't be helping Lin Yuan escape. Instead, he would be helping Lin Yuan escape. The Council of the Demon Emperor said that they couldn't find any information. The staff member in charge of reporting said with a resentful face, "It is said that the Endless Sea is divided into the Outer Sea, which is controlled by the demon beasts with the dragon bloodline, and the Deep Sea, which is controlled by the dragon bloodline. Almost none of the aquatic demon beasts in our northern frontier have the dragon bloodline, so they can't enter the deep sea. Naturally, we can't find any information about the Dragon King. What AF * king piece of trash." The middle-aged man's face changed, and he growled. Although the embroidered uniform guards had obtained complete control over the Council of the Demon Emperor, that was only limited to the management level of the northern frontier. In fact, the Council of the Demon Emperor, which was still at the bottom, was difficult to suppress. Whether it was the wandering martial artists without any influence, the information traffickers who wandered around, or the demi-humans and demon beasts who weren't favored, they were all under the command of the Council of the Demon Emperor. Even the embroidered uniform guards, who had the upper hand, only had the authority to access the Council of the Demon Emperor's files. They couldn't directly command them to do anything. Now that the Council of the Demon Emperor couldn't find any information, the embroidered uniform guards were even more at a loss. So whether or not to activate the Beast Pouch's self-destruction program depended entirely on his intuition. The feeling of having the life and death of his top boss in his hands wasn't a good feeling. One mistake, and the beautiful northern frontier would be gone. Without Lin Yuan's suppression, even if the outside forces didn't put pressure on the northern frontier's internal struggle for power and profit would directly destroy the current organizational structure of the northern frontier. As the head of the Ministry of Works, he didn't participate in the operation of the northern frontier. He only needed to ask Li Zhong for money, and then take out something that could shut Li Zhong up every once in a while. But he also knew that the northern frontier wasn't harmonious at the moment. The various factions were at odds with each other. With Lin Yuan overseeing the northern frontier, they didn't dare to go overboard. But if Lin Yuan was gone, what was Li Zhong, and what was the embroidered uniform guards? "Minister, should we?" The staff member pursed his lips, looking hesitant as well. The middle-aged man glanced at the staff member, narrowed his eyes, and said, "If anything happens to Lord Dragon King, you'll be responsible. I'll immediately sign the papers to activate the Beast Pouch's self-destruction program and release Lord Dragon King's body." The staff member shut his mouth resentfully. The middle-aged man took a deep breath, looked around, and said sternly, "I know that even in the Ministry of Works, there are many shifter emperors and embroidered uniform guard spies. But I want you to be clear about one thing. The northern frontier is where it is today all because of Lord Dragon King's support. If half a word of what happened here today is leaked, you should know what the consequences will be. I don't want that to happen, do you understand?" As soon as he finished speaking, a small portion of the people present lowered their heads. Their expressions couldn't be seen. You might think that passing the news of Lord Dragon King to your superiors is an excellent opportunity to make a contribution. You might even be able to take the initiative and obtain the right to rule the northern frontier. You can also use this to soar into the sky. But I'm telling you now, that's all bullsh*t. The shifter emperors might be leaderless, but their strength is there. Li Zhong's palace guards aren't just for show. The northern battlefront army doesn't have Zhang Qilin, but there's still a group of generals from the Blackwater army. There's also Li Zhongxing from the southern expedition. Now, he has the strongest military force in his hands. The newly established Mi-7 and Yi Bus-ho, who worked with the embroidered uniform guards before, aren't easy to deal with. Even the Northern Territory Chamber of Commerce, which is the weakest in your eyes, doesn't have the face to act so simply. To put it bluntly, the Northern Territory Chamber of Commerce is able to suppress so many beast kings, aristocratic families, and even have a good relationship with the other 6 dynasties. You can't possibly think that it's all because of Lord Dragon King, right? The middle-aged man's eyes flashed, and he shouted angrily, "Lord Dragon King is in a very dangerous situation now, but it's not certain that he'll die. If the news gets out, the northern frontier will be destroyed by internal strife. The Dragon King will still be the Dragon King, but you, me, and those guys outside won't have a good ending. Do you believe me?" Chapter 683. In a side hall of the Dragon Palace of the West Sea. A cold-looking dragon man in a luxurious purple robe stared at the 2 dragons in front of him and said coldly, "Since the establishment of the evil dragon pool, there have been jailbreakers. However, this is the first time in thousands of years that the evil dragon pool has been destroyed. If we don't investigate this matter, how can the Dragon Palace of the 4 Seas raise its head in the future? Third brother, this is no longer a matter of face." A dragon man in a dark green robe squinted his eyes and said, "One of the sons of Long Jiao has died, and a group of middle-level combatants have almost exhausted all the forces that we can mobilize. Instead of catching the mastermind behind this for the sake of face, we should think about how to get some foreign aid to help us resist the attacks of the mutated ones." Then, he paused and said in a low voice, "When my people arrived at the scene, they only saw a group of wandering mutated ones and Xiao Niu's torn body. After sweeping the entire prison, they didn't find any signs of living beings. That Black Jiao is also missing." A dragon man in a red robe crossed his arms in front of his chest and said in a low voice, "Until now, you are still thinking about meaningless things like face and Black Jiao? If I were third brother, I would have mobilized all the available manpower to investigate the evil dragon pool. After all, the mutated ones bypassed the front line and appeared directly under the jurisdiction of the Dragon Palace. This is not good news." A dragon man in a white robe nodded slightly and said indifferently, "Big brother is right. Now that the mutated ones bypassed us and appeared directly behind us, this is not good news. If something goes wrong, our escape route may be cut off. Even if Black Jiao is willing to cooperate with us, we may not be able to leave the Endless Sea. Then investigate." A cold light flashed in the eyes of the dragon man in a purple robe. He growled, "No matter who is behind this, I must make them pay." As the current Dragon King of the Dragon Palace of the West Sea, the dragon man in a purple robe naturally knew more details than the other 3 Dragon Kings. However, he only knew a little. So far, he only knew that the evil dragons in the evil dragon pool intended to release Lin Yuan and possibly send several 8 distresses to attack the evil dragon pool. For this reason, he specially transferred Xiao Niu, who was recuperating, to ensure that Black Jiao would be safe. However, what happened after that was completely out of his control. Not only did the evil dragon pool completely fall, but the jailers and prisoners inside were also infected and turned into mutated ones. When they were cleaning up the mutated ones, the cleanup team was also greatly affected. This was because one of the mutated ones was Blood Lady, the pillar of the red crab race. Even if the staff and jailers in the evil dragon pool had either died or been infected and turned into mutated ones, and no one reported back to him, he could still guess that Blood Lady must have heard about Crab General. This irascible titled Demon King directly killed her way into the evil dragon pool and got involved in the following incident, causing her to become a mutated one. Therefore, there was something strange about this matter. It was as if several forces were working together for the same goal. The evil dragons wanted to release Lin Yuan, so they told Blood Lady about Crab General. They planned to use Blood Lady to create chaos so that they could take the opportunity to attack the evil dragon pool and rescue Lin Yuan. This was the West Sea Dragon King's current train of thought. However, the problem was, why was there no sign of the evil dragons among the mutated ones in the evil dragon pool? If even Blood Lady couldn't escape, even if it was an 8 distresses evil dragon, it shouldn't be able to escape from the hands of a powerful mutated one. Or was it that the evil dragons only wanted Blood Lady to annoy the West Sea Dragon Palace and didn't plan to release Lin Yuan? An 8 distresses evil dragon might or might not appear. Let's not count them for now. There's also the Black Jiao. If the infected person came for the Black Jiao, then the Black Jiao should have been taken away by the infected person, so it doesn't count. The West Sea Dragon King lowered his head and murmured, but why did the Warden and the Purple Jade Fish King disappear too? After thinking for a while, he still couldn't figure it out. The West Sea Dragon King raised his head with red eyes and said in a deep voice, "The most important thing now is to find the Black Jiao." Both the evil dragons and Blood Lady came for the Black Jiao. So, could the mysterious infected person also come for the Black Jiao? If it infected the Black Jiao, then it must have left some traces. If the Black Jiao survived, then we can find the Black Jiao, which means we've found the infected person. How do we find it? The White-Robed Dragon King glanced at the West Sea Dragon King and said in a deep voice, "If this happened a few hundred years ago, the entire Endless Sea would be under the control of the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas. Let alone a Black Jiao, you can even scrape anyone out. But now, do you think we can still do it?" As his voice fell, the other 3 Dragon King fell into a state of silence. Indeed, although the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas was still a giant in the Endless Sea, it was not enough to be above the sea beasts. Regardless of whether it was the species of the Dragon Palace nearby or the sea beasts without the dragon bloodline, they were all gradually becoming stronger. If the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas still wanted to be the same as it was thousands of years ago, oppressing the sea beasts in the Endless Sea and ordering them around, they would definitely end up in a miserable state. Except for a few sea areas that were directly under the jurisdiction of the members of the Dragon Palace, the rest of the sea areas were almost all ruled by the local monster tribes. In terms of status, the current Dragon Palace of the Four Seas was not necessarily comparable to the Monster King Court. Although the latter's overall strength was not as good as the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas, as the leader of the monster forces on the land, the Monster King Court did not have the mood to engage in any intrigue. Dealing with the humans was already a headache for the Monster King Court. That was why the Hengduan Mountain was so chaotic. As long as one had enough strength, one could become a Monster King. There was no need to pay attention to bloodline. But the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas was different. The attitude of the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas towards the other sea monsters was no different from enslaving them. The stronger the dragon bloodline, the better the treatment in the Endless Sea. When a species of the Dragon Palace with tyrannical strength but not noble bloodline saw a pure-blooded dragon that was too lazy to even cultivate, it had to follow the etiquette of a servant. Although the latter could not threaten it in terms of strength, it could easily decide the living environment of the species behind it, and even its individual future and resource supply. A single word from the pure-blooded dragon could directly deprive it of everything. In the eyes of the members of the dragon clan, those with thin bloodline should provide for those with thick bloodline. But obviously, that was only because they did not belong to the group with thin bloodline. Chapter 684. The red-clothed Dragon King pondered for a moment and said, "We can't let everyone know about the Black Jiao. You know, those bastards see that the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas is declining day by day. They can't wait to devour us. If they know about this, not only will they not help us to search for the Black Jiao, they may even make things difficult for us." Whether it was the Dragon Palace or the demon beasts in the outer sea, at this moment, they really wanted to devour the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas. After years of oppression, the reputation of the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas was extremely bad. As long as there was a chance, a war would break out in the entire Endless Sea. Therefore, the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas didn't dare to expose their weakness. They planned to evacuate while maintaining their normal state. Except for a few well-informed people who knew that the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas was defeated by a mysterious force in the deep sea and had planned to evacuate the Endless Sea, the rest of the information was forcibly suppressed by the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas. One of the reasons was that the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas didn't want to have conflicts with the other Dragon Palace species. Another reason was that the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas hoped that the slower Dragon Palace species could become meat shields to delay the aberrant when they were evacuating. The green-clothed Dragon King nodded and said, "That's right. Besides, there may be a aberrant with the Black Jiao. Once those Dragon Palace species come into contact with the aberrant, they will quickly realize what we are fighting against. It's unrealistic to expect them to help, because they will definitely take this opportunity to escape to the mainland. If it really comes to that, let's not talk about whether it's safe or not. With so many demon beasts drilling into the humans' territory, there will definitely be a war. At that time, we will be attacked from both sides, and the inheritance of the Dragon Clan may be cut off." Speaking of this, the green-clothed Dragon King paused, as if he was considering something. After the other three Dragon King looked at him, he slowly said, "Why don't we let him go? He has been in the evil dragon pool for 50 years. Give him a chance to atone for his sins. As long as he finds the Black Jiao, we will give him back his freedom." The faces of the Dragon King instantly fell. On the other side, in the undersea prison, the beast pouch containing Lin Yuan's main body trembled slightly under the washing of the seawater. A gray light was attached to it. After a short moment, the spiritual light belonging to the beast pouch disappeared in a flash. Accompanied by the sound of cloth tearing, a Black Jiao with its eyes closed slowly appeared in the cell. The pressure of the seawater and the smell of blood permeating the air came together. Lin Yuan, who felt the changes in his surroundings, quickly opened his eyes. Turning his head to look at the furnishings in the cell, Lin Yuan remained silent. At the same time, he used his demonic power to open the door in front of him. He didn't know where the puppet's body was, but he was sure that this was the place where the puppet's body fought its final battle, because the beast pouches containing him and Ao Qian were all hidden here. The divine mind controlling the puppet's body would only make such a decision when encountering an enemy that it couldn't resist. However, it wouldn't hide the two beast pouches too far away. After all, the Endless Sea was a strange place. Even under the calm sea sand, it was hard to say what kind of terrifying monsters were hiding. Therefore, other than in a safe place, it was best to hide things within one's sight. Otherwise, after the battle, the hidden beast pouches might have been stolen by someone. The puppet's body isn't here. Was it torn apart or dragged away? Lin Yuan's heterochromatic eyes flashed with a cold light. He didn't know what happened to the divine mind controlling the puppet's body, but after he woke up, he couldn't remember anything about this period of time. This meant that after he woke up, the divine mind didn't return to the main body, and he couldn't perceive the existence of the divine mind or the puppet's body. He had to prepare for the worst. "System, what happened in the outside world when my main body was sleeping?" Lin Yuan asked. "Name, eliminate the Great Old Dominator. Type, mandatory mission for all hosts. Number of participants, 9,311. Mission Phase 1 progress, 8%. Mission Phase 1, open the curtain of a new era. Description, the Great Old Dominators are a strange race. They used to be gods of the past, guides of intelligent life, and great men of a certain era. They used to be full of flowers and glory, but after their era died, they were vilified as monsters by the new era. Therefore, the long river of time slowly flowed, and the monsters that were supposed to be sleeping woke up again. They wanted to use the disaster of destroying the world to take back everything that belonged to them. Mission completion condition: start a new era of change in the current world. With the appearance of the great old dominators as the standard, the success and failure of this mission will be assessed. Mission countdown: 87 days. Mission completion reward: increase by 1 level, a super level technique, 200 million incense power. Mission failure punishment: those who fail to meet the requirements will be completely unbound by the system, and all system skills and models will be stripped away. Almost as soon as Lin Yuan opened his mouth to ask, the system directly stuffed a task into his sea of consciousness. Lin Yuan, the mission of starting a new era of change should be considered to have been completed by him, right? The system dragged this mission out. Could it be that the disappearance of the puppet body and spiritual force was because of the so-called great old dominators? Speaking of which, what kind of infuriating things did these great old dominators do that even the system could not hold it in? The last time the system took action, it was because the dove snake did not know what was good for it and tried to devour the system's power. That was why it was suppressed by the system. However, the system obviously did not give out any mission, such as exterminating the dove snake race from the various worlds. Was the dove snake not powerful enough to make the system angry? Or could it be that this great old dominator made the system suffer a small loss? Lin Yuan adjusted his state of mind and said with a smile, "This seems to be a good thing for me. I'm currently at the 8th level of the Mountain Lord realm. As long as I can break through to the desolate demon realm in these 87 days, won't I be able to advance to the demon king realm for free?" The system was speechless. What was in this guy's head? He did not even ask about the great old dominators, nor did he insist on retrieving the memories of the puppet body. His thoughts were scattered all the way, and now he was already thinking about the mission reward of advancing to the next realm for free? Did he start to have no sense of propriety when dreaming again? Have you forgotten that you have to complete an advancement mission to advance to the next realm? The system appeared in Lin Yuan's mind again. Chapter 685. It's been almost 3 months. Isn't it enough for me to do an advancement mission? Lin Yuan narrowed his eyes and asked subconsciously. Advancement mission, 90 days of seclusion? The system asked provocatively. Lin Yuan was speechless. In terms of shamelessness, he lost in the end. If he really went into seclusion for 90 days, even if he completed the mission, his realm would have already reached the desolate demon realm. Even if he completed the advancement mission, there wouldn't be much reward. The so-called freeloading of a realm was naturally a fool's dream. Let's get down to business. How did the great old ones provoke you? Lin Yuan curled up his body, narrowed his eyes, and said, "Such a big move, it's not a small expenditure for you, right? The great old ones are just a small inconvenience to me. Their foothold in the myriad worlds is nothing more than a mental infection, but with my protection, they can't use their abilities at all." When have you ever seen an ambitious person of the old era win against the destiny of the new era? Although they've always wanted to destroy this world and restart everything, it doesn't have much of an impact on me, so I've been too lazy to care about them. I didn't expect these things to be so rampant and have the guts to provoke me directly. Then why don't I wipe them out directly, so that they don't cause any trouble for me in the future? The system's response was very calm. There were very few self-derived worlds in the universe today. Even if they existed, they were just sprouts and couldn't bear life at all. So in theory, in the universe today, other than the self-derived consciousnesses of the worlds, the influence of the heavenly axiom was still quite terrifying. When the consciousnesses of the worlds met the incomplete heavenly axiom, they would either respectfully call it boss or fight with each other. But in general, there were very few consciousnesses of the worlds that could fight against the heavenly axiom. Otherwise, those hosts wouldn't be able to survive in different worlds. A group of deformed monsters that couldn't even be ranked in a proper god system, wandering the world because of unwillingness, resentment, and greed. Calling them the Great Old Ones was already a compliment. Now, the Great Old Ones had provoked the heavenly axiom, which was worse than provoking the consciousnesses of this world. Phew, after letting out a long breath, Lin Yuan said, "What's the situation outside? And during this period of time, what has my divine sense been doing while controlling the puppet body?" Although the divine sense was essentially one with Lin Yuan, when the main body was asleep, the separated divine sense had its own consciousness and memories. Unless Lin Yuan's main body woke up and recalled the divine sense, this memory would not be shared with the main body. Now that the divine sense had disappeared, it was naturally impossible to retrieve the memories of this period. Although the spirit had the same personality and wisdom as him, it was still possible to get two different answers when doing the same multiple-choice question twice. Besides, he had slept for a long time, and his puppet body had made a few judgments. Now that he had lost his memories, it would be difficult for him to plan his next move even if he was a deity. There's a lot of fun out there. Every faction knows of your existence as the Black Jiao, but their attitudes toward you are very complicated. For example, the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas wants to use your influence to establish a kingdom on the northern frontier, but they don't want you to leave their control. There are other factions, most of which don't have a good relationship with the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas. Their goal for finding you is relatively simple. They want to kill you directly to prevent you from forming a partnership with the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas. After all, this is the first time in countless years that the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas has been so weak. They won't easily give up on the chance to overthrow the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas. Now that you mention it, I feel like it's better for me to find a crack in the ground and hide. Lin Yuan took a deep breath. When he had just arrived in this world, even a serpent with hopes of joining the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas dared to look down on the Gravel tribe. Now, there was still a place for the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas among the top factions. In Lin Yuan's plan to fight against the Xinwu dynasty, the conditions that he needed could be easily achieved by the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas. Therefore, Lin Yuan had always felt that the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas was very strong. However, according to the system's attitude, the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas was already on the verge of destruction. If the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas did anything wrong, it could cause the huge faction to be reduced to nothing, just like the ancient demon court countless years ago. Do you think that as long as you sneak back to the Sky Martial continent and communicate with the human factions, and then firmly block the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas in the Endless Sea, you can solve this problem? Don't tell me. Lin Yuan was silent before he could finish the sentence, isn't that so? Indeed, sleeping for too long was not a good thing. Even now, his brain was not working well. According to his previous train of thought, it was indeed possible to solve the problem of the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas. However, from a macro point of view, this method was rather short-sighted. Moreover, it would bring him even more trouble. From the northern frontier, it could be seen that the humans found it very difficult to accept the demonic beasts. Even the humans who received Lin Yuan's favor in the northern frontier would subconsciously think that it was all because of Li Zhong's contribution. They would not mention Lin Yuan's contribution at all. Therefore, Lin Yuan chose to join hands with the human factions in the Sky Martial continent. After blocking the route to the Endless Sea, not only would the humans not treat Lin Yuan as a reliable ally, it would also cause the already weak demonic beasts to worsen. When the demonic beasts in the ocean fall and collapse, what kind of storm could the demonic beasts that were raised on land cause? At that time, the humans' exploitation of the demonic beasts would only become even more severe. Even the foundation of the northern frontier would be targeted by others. Unless at that time, Lin Yuan could really pull the big shots of the ancient demon court to endorse him. Otherwise, those top factions would not stop him. Instead, they would signal the factions under them to increase the pressure on Lin Yuan. They would force out all of Lin Yuan's trump cards before deciding whether to destroy the northern frontier and eat the fruit that Lin Yuan had cultivated. Other than the humans, the demonic beasts' hidden dangers were also not small. After all, the incubus was about to go into seclusion. The position of Beast Lord in the Hengduan mountain range was empty. Those competitors would definitely not give Lin Yuan face and keep quiet about this matter. When the time came, the Hengduan mountain range would be in an uproar. They would say that Lin Yuan had joined hands with the humans to kill the demonic beasts. Not only would the position of Beast Lord not fall into his hands, even the current trade route of the Northern Territory Chamber of Commerce might not be able to be maintained. After losing the economic support, the foundation of the northern frontier would still suffer a huge impact. In order to solve a problem, he would create an even bigger problem for himself. Chapter 686. Don't forget that you are no longer a human. It will be the same even if you transform into a human one day. Unless you can find a world where no living creatures know you and the forces of the heavens do not interfere, you will always be labeled as a demonic beast. As long as you don't bring it out in the open, it won't hurt you no matter how hard you fight with other demonic beasts. However, if you join forces with humans to destroy the demonic beast forces, you will instantly become a loner. Both humans and demonic beasts will ostracize you, and there will be no place for you in the world. In addition, if you want to deal with the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas now, it is undoubtedly an unrealistic idea. However, your growth speed is far faster than the other living creatures in this world. The forces under your command are also growing day by day. Sooner or later, you will surpass the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas. At that time, will they still be considered trouble in your eyes? When you dealt with the aristocratic families and sects on the northern frontier, did you take them seriously? If you had just arrived in this world, would you have the ability to do the same thing? The system's words were like a thunderclap exploding in his ears. Lin Yuan was silent for a moment before he suddenly grinned. As a demonic beast who had cultivated for less than 2 years, even if he deliberately suppressed it, his growth speed was still very terrifying. In the Tianwu continent, he had already touched the threshold of the older generation. If he did not have a special bloodline, no demonic beast of the same generation could compete with him. Even if the forces that the Heavenly Gate Guardians belonged to one day launched an attack on him, even if he had not grown to the point where he could compete with them, the system would not stand by and do nothing. After all, with the system's ability, as long as Lin Yuan could pay the corresponding price, it would only take an instant for the ancient demon court, which had been deposited in the river of time, to reappear. Just like this time, all the hosts, including Lin Yuan, could receive a large reward for eliminating the Great Old Ones. However, in reality, Lin Yuan knew very well that this expenditure was only paid for by the system. Sooner or later, everything he owed would be paid back to the system with interest. After all, profiteers would never make a losing deal. Fortunately, he had activated a series of new functions such as the power of incense, and his rate of growth would only become faster and faster. After a period of time, whether it was the dragon palaces of the Four Seas or the Heavenly Gates Guardians, would these forces that stood at the top of this world be any different from the aristocratic families and sects that he had wiped out in the northern frontier? He was helpless against the dragon palace of the Four Seas because he was not strong enough. As long as he had enough time, he wouldn't need to owe such a large amount of money. This time, the matter with the Great Old One could only be considered as his bad luck for giving benefits to his colleagues. As for those hosts who failed to complete the mission and were stripped of their systems, it could only be said that this was their fate. They had the opportunity to become extraordinary, but they failed to grasp it, so they deserved to be reduced to mediocrity. In other words, if they didn't even have this level of ability, fighting against Hung Jun was nothing but a fool's dream. If they left early, it would only free up more energy for the system to nurture new hosts and provide help to other capable hosts. Could this be considered a good thing for them? Perhaps with the help of the system, they would be at the top of the food chain in their respective worlds. However, in the future, other than the outstanding hosts like Lin Yuan, there was also Hung Jun, a top-notch almighty who controlled the heavenly Tao and the primordial world. If a small fry wandered around in such a war, the only outcome would be to be completely crushed. In addition, the most important point is that all hosts have to participate in this mission to eliminate the Great Old One. You're just lucky to have completed the first stage of the mission in advance, so you have more than 3 months to prepare for the next step compared to the other hosts. However, now that you're back on the main road, the dragon palaces of the 4 seas are stuck in the endless sea. It's true that they can't come up, but can you still go down? If you can't complete the mission, you'll be directly unbound. Do you think this is a joke? Remember, I can choose whether to start the mission for you or not. I can also give you rewards according to the difficulty of the mission. However, all the punishment for the mission corresponds to the reward. As long as you participate in the mission, there's no possibility of not receiving punishment. If you choose the strategy of blocking the dragon palaces of the 4 seas in the endless sea, then I can announce your failure in the follow-up mission in advance. I have the right to strip all your privileges and beat you down to the mortal world, turning you into a black jiao with extremely poor aptitude. Although you won't die, you can only dream of being as mighty as you are now. Lin Yuan, actually, he could really come down. Most of the demon beasts looked the same to Lin Yuan. At least, he looked at them from the perspective of a human. However, he could only distinguish the species of the other party from their appearance. If he really wanted to distinguish each one, he would need to carefully observe the other party's expression and hair. It would be best if there were wounds on their bodies that could be seen at a glance. Otherwise, it would be very difficult for him to accurately identify each demon beast under his command. To Lin Yuan, this was very normal. Just like in his previous life, there were often cases of face blindness between different races. Often, one could only distinguish whether the other party was someone they knew from their body shape and voice. As a transmigrator, Lin Yuan naturally couldn't recognize wild beasts and demon beasts at a glance. Moreover, when he transmigrated, he was already a snake alone. There was no other of his kind to refer to. Naturally, he couldn't learn how to recognize beasts in the fastest period of ignorance. After that, he became more and more convinced that he was a human and didn't think in this direction. To Lin Yuan, there was a way to sneak into the endless sea again. Once the golden body technique was activated, the scales on his body would turn golden. Who would be able to recognize that he was actually a black jiao? Lin Yuan used to rely on this technique to fight enemies above his level. However, it was no longer suitable for the current Lin Yuan. This was because when he was weak, even if there was a difference of a few small realms, there wouldn't be a difference of more than 2 digits in attributes. However, now, the difference of a small realm could be thousands of attribute points. Even if the golden body technique had a bug-like 65% damage immunity, it still wouldn't be a godly technique. Just like in Lin Yuan's memory of the previous life's techniques, no matter how strong the body was, there would still be a weak point. Once the weak point was broken, the entire technique would be useless. Although the golden body technique wouldn't be completely useless and could even be restored to its peak through attribute points, for Lin Yuan's current stage, the practicality of this technique had been greatly reduced. Investing attribute points would only be a loss. Chapter 687. In a sense, the system's attitude towards him was a love-hate relationship. On one hand, it was afraid of Lin Yuan's uncontrollable nature, and on the other hand, it was absolutely rational. It was very clear that no matter how outstanding the other hosts were, they were just high-level employees. Back then, it couldn't even defeat Hung Jun when it was at its peak. What could it do now that it was in an incomplete state? Even if it nurtured a powerful host, it could only restrain Hung Jun's lackeys. The only ones who could truly go against Hung Jun were Lin Yuan and the other uncontrollable elements that did not act according to the system's wishes. That was why the system would communicate with Lin Yuan from time to time and give some of its own suggestions. However, it rarely gave things like missions to guide Lin Yuan's growth. Towards the outer sea, which direction is it? Lin Yuan pondered for a moment, gave up on some bold ideas, and asked. From a rational point of view, the best choice was to blend in with the monsters in the outer sea and cultivate his own forces. After the hidden dangers of the Great Old Ones erupted, he would step in and reap the benefits. How would I know? The system's style changed, and a line of words slowly appeared before returning to silence. Lin Yuan was silent for a moment, and the smile on his face became even wider. After all, the Endless Sea was not the Sky Martial continent. The upper limit of the martial power here was even more terrifying. After all, they were all mutated species that came from outside the Heaven Gate. Even if they were strong enough, they would not be trusted by the Heaven Gate's guardian. Unless it was a last resort, the forces of the Endless Sea would definitely not be used to guard the Heaven Gate. At the same time, all of Lin Yuan's privileges in the Sky Martial Continent were useless in the Endless Sea. In other words, if the Great Old Ones did not appear, the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas would think of retreating to the Sky Martial Continent and let the other monsters in the Endless Sea fight against the Great Old Ones. Then, an existence like Lin Yuan would not enter the eyes of the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas. Even if he was hiding a big secret, the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas would domineeringly come and ask for it. They would not cooperate with Lin Yuan's plan against the Xinwu dynasty. When he jumped out of the clutches of the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas, but could not return to the continent, Lin Yuan was just an ordinary monster in the Endless Sea. Moreover, it was the kind of demonic beast that didn't have a high combat strength. Just like when he was groping for survival in the Hengduan mountain range, he had to be careful when dealing with demonic beasts of the Wisdom Realm. However, at this moment, Lin Yuan's heart was once again ignited with hot blood that he hadn't felt in a long time. Boundless battle intent erupted from his body. The comfortable life in the northern frontier had gradually corrupted him. Even he himself had forgotten that he had never been a qualified politician. Whether it was in his previous life or in this life, he had always been a fugitive in a game of death. Only when he was at the end of his road could he see the real him. In a temporary settlement in the Hengduan Mountains, the young man dressed in a crimson robe slowly raised his head. His mysterious purple eyes flashed with a cold light. His long silver hair was casually draped over his shoulders. The only thing that didn't match his white hair was his delicate and pretty face that looked to be in his early 20s. President, according to the information from the Men of Sacrifice, the Black Jiao has now entered the Endless Sea. Something happened to him and we have completely lost contact with him. I think this is the best time for us to launch a counterattack. 5 meters away, a young man dressed in a white cloak knelt on the ground with one knee. There was a slender narrow sword hanging on his waist. His black eyes flashed with a bloodthirsty luster. He licked his lips and said, "President, please give the order. I am willing to be the vanguard to destroy Shunning City and take Li Zhong's head as a gift to my god." God? The president asked frivolously. He adjusted his sitting position on the tigerskin chair and sneered, "Your god is not my god. This time, I came back to tell the Black Jiao that if he doesn't want to give it to me, I will take it back by myself. Destroying the northern frontier has never been my real purpose. What I want is the entire northern frontier. Do you understand?" As soon as he finished speaking, the white-cloaked young man's expression changed several times. He said in a deep voice, "President, if it weren't for my god, you would already be a corpse that couldn't be any more dead. Whether you like it or not, you have been branded by my god. You and I were originally, Puff." The young man's head exploded like a watermelon before he could finish his words. His tall body was still kneeling on the ground with one knee. The president appeared behind his body and shook the yellow and white thing in his hand in disgust. He said coldly, "I hate bullshit about God the most. If your God is so powerful, why do you still hide in the dark and create trash like you to disgust the Black Jiao? A pathetic loser wants me to worship him as my God?" As soon as he finished speaking, the young man's body trembled slightly. The flesh on his neck wriggled slowly. Soon, a red sarcoma grew out. As the sarcoma wriggled and expanded, an intact head grew out. The only thing missing was his hair and eyebrows. The young man in the white cloak, who had regrown his head, narrowed his eyes slightly and said in an extremely indifferent tone, "President, it seems that even though you were pulled back from the underworld to the human world by my God, you still don't know the great power of my God. On average, you kill me more than 60 times a day, but you never really kill me once. Why do you have to do such a useless thing?" At this point, the young man in the white cloak stood up from the ground and said in an almost indifferent tone, "Destroy the Northern Territory. This is an oracle that my God has just given. If it wasn't for the fact that I want to use those weak mortals under your command as cannon fodder, do you think I would need to ask for your opinion?" Clang! The narrow blade was unsheathed. A dark red line of blood shot out. The president's crimson robe was cut in two, revealing the white flesh underneath and a knife wound that was constantly healing. Seeing the knife wound that was constantly healing, the young man in the white cloak had a disdainful smile on his face. He said coldly, "In the end, you're just using my God's power to prolong your life. There's no difference between you and me. Why do you have to classify yourself as a mortal? Throw away your ridiculous thoughts and truly merge with us. This world will be under your control. Why limit yourself to the northern frontier? You're a monster, I'm a human. This is the fundamental difference between us. I won't approve your action plan. Give up." The president looked down at the knife wound on his chest that was rapidly healing. He frowned and looked disgusted. It could be seen that he had an extremely complicated attitude towards this power that could not kill him even if his head was crushed, or heal him quickly after being cut by a knife. On one hand, he needed this power to support his actions. On the other hand, he hated the owner of this power. Chapter 688. Nothing is invincible in this world. Even the self-proclaimed God behind you is wary of the power that the Black Jiao possesses. Otherwise, you unkillable monsters would be able to grind the Black Jiao to death, wouldn't you? The president rubbed the yellow and white thing on the white-caped youth's body and said in a deep voice, "In other words, the Black Jiao also possesses this power. At the very least, it has the power to kill you monsters. Even if it left, this power is still in the northern frontier. Ha! It seems that the Black Jiao has already realized the existence of you monsters. President, you, ring ring ring." Before the white-caped youth could finish speaking, an ear-piercing siren sounded in the camp. "Damn it!" The white-caped youth changed the topic and said with a gloomy face, "Do those night busters all have dog noses? They can find us no matter where we move to. Or is there a mole among us?" The white-caped youth's eyes fell on the president when he mentioned the mole. After all, this guy used to be a high-ranking official in the northern frontier. Even though he was pulled back from the dead by God and transformed into an undying, he still hated the power of God. If there really was a mole, the possibility of him being the mole was too high. Compared to the question of who is the mole, I think you should go out and organize your team to fight. The president walked back to his tiger-skin chair and sneered, "Yen Shirgui, I don't want the Blackwater Army or the Northern Battlefront Army to kill me. They might recognize me. Do you understand? If you can't even fend off a few waves of attacks, don't say anything stupid like destroying the northern frontier again." Yen Shirgui was silent for a moment and left the president's room with his sword that hadn't been sheathed. The battle cries outside, the clashing of weapons, and the screams didn't seem to affect the president who was resting in the room. The president raised his right hand and looked at it. He murmured, "God. Not just a powerful cultivator. Cultivators don't have the power to grant other creatures immortality. So, did God really exist? The Black Jiao also claimed to be a god. Could it be true? That's right. How could someone who could make a god cower not be a god? Ha, ha, ha ha ha." After a series of questions, it was followed by a maniacal laughter. The laughter lasted for 5 to 6 breaths before the president's expression returned to normal. He murmured, "What if I accidentally got involved in a war between two gods? I wonder if I'll become a god after killing a god." The maniacal laughter rang out again. Until, boom. A huge explosion came from outside. The president's laughter stopped abruptly. He quickly got up and walked to a window to take a look at the situation outside. What a strange scene. Other than the Blackwater Army and the Northern Army that were fighting with the monsters in white cloaks, there was a third force that entered the battlefield. Apes wearing heavy armor that could easily crush humans were waving all kinds of weapons that were over 10 meters long. They rode on demonic beasts that were also wearing heavy armor as they charged back and forth in the camp. Even though most of these strange demonic beasts were only in the wisdom realm, they could easily crush those heaven realm cultivators. Any attack that landed on them could only slightly slow them down, but couldn't kill them directly. Was this the advantage of demonic beasts? The president had no choice but to admit that these ape-type demonic beasts were indeed natural warriors. They could wear human armor and wield weapons that only humans could use. Moreover, in terms of quality, they were far superior to humans. After all, those things that easily weighed hundreds of thousands of kilograms, close to 1,000,000 kilograms. Although a Heaven Dipper realm cultivator could support them by circulating their aura chi, if they were to wear them in battle, wouldn't they be exhausted to death? Only demonic beasts that were born with strong physiques could wear this kind of armor made of ordinary metal in battle. That's right, ordinary metal. He could tell at a glance that even though these armors looked the same as the strange black armor worn by the Blackwater Army and could ignore almost all physical damage, that was only because the armor was thick enough. In terms of quality, the armor worn by the Blackwater Army was far superior to the armor worn by the demonic beasts. How terrifying, Black Jiao. The president softly muttered. With this kind of demonic beast army in hand, as long as they reached a certain number, it was possible for them to sweep through the world. Even the Blood Liao Knights, who were famed for their cavalry and were known to be able to crush everything, would only end up being crushed on the spot when they collided with this army of monsters. There was also the Divine Martial Heavy Steps, who were known to fight to the death and never retreat. They could stop the charging Blood Liao Knights, but they definitely couldn't stop this army of monsters. Was this the philosophy of the Northern Frontier Army? As long as they had the money, they could do anything. It wasn't that the human side couldn't do anything to this demonic beast army, but it was clear that with the current technological strength of the human side, defending the city against this demonic beast army was naturally no problem. They could even easily use all kinds of ballistae to heavily injure them. However, once they left the city, there wasn't a single army that could fight against this demonic beast army. Whoever fought would die. From this point of view, the president could already see the defeat of the Shuangjian dynasty. That dynasty that was famous for its barbaric cavalry never had a strong city. They firmly believed that as long as they reached the grassland, no one could escape the charge of the Frost Mirror barbarian. However, if they ran into this demonic beast army, even the strongest cavalry would be smashed to pieces. The two demonic beasts and their heavy equipment added together definitely weighed several million jin. When their numbers increased, it was a moving steel wall. Were there any cavalry that could charge against the wall? Even if there were, could he win? Even if the various dynasties spent time and energy to research the corresponding equipment, the northern frontier didn't even need to make a big breakthrough. As long as the equipment on the demonic beasts was melted down and reforged into the standard equipment of the Blackwater Army, it would be another round of crushing. Shaking his head and sweeping away the distracting thoughts in his mind, the president strode toward the backyard. There was no secret passage that connected to the other strongholds. He didn't want to fight against these monsters. Even if he didn't die, who would be willing to be crushed into meat paste over and over again, right? Black Jiao, it seems that you were right. If back then forget it. This is also good. Let me see what kind of terrifying existence you are from the perspective of an opponent. I will wait for you at the northern frontier. I look forward to the day when you and I have a decisive battle. The president's voice became softer and softer until it completely disappeared. Chapter 689. On the other side. Lin Yuan, who had activated the golden body release, wandered around the various seas of the endless sea. The situation here was different from what he had expected. It was a bit similar to the ancient style of Japan in his previous life. The dragon palaces of the four seas were located in the four directions of the endless sea. They each had their own territory, but they were connected. It was said that there was a place called the Temple of the Dragon God in one of the seas of the endless sea. It was the place where several true dragons of the dragon palaces of the four seas slept. It was also the meeting place where the Dragon King of the Four Seas would discuss important matters of the entire Endless Sea. Similar to the Elysium, the top powerhouses of the dragon palaces of the Four Seas would take turns to guard the outer area of the Temple of the Dragon God. The security was even tighter than the Crystal Palace where the Dragon King of the Four Seas lived. Demonic beasts without permission, even those with dragon bloodlines, would be expelled or even destroyed immediately if they broke in. If the Endless Sea really fell one day, then the Temple of the Dragon God would be the safest place in the entire Endless Sea. Because those who could enter the Temple of the Dragon God, whether they lived there for a long time or were on guard duty, were at the top of the food chain in the Dragon Clan system. As for the other seas, whether it was the Deep Sea or the Open Sea, they were similar to the model of the shogunate. Different seas had different rulers, just like the daimyo of the Warring States period. If the powerhouses of the dragon palaces of the four seas did not intervene, these rulers would be the only kings of these seas. Of course, in the current situation, even if the powerhouses of the dragon palaces intervened, the daimyo would not give face to them. The dragon palaces of the four seas were like the emperor of the Warring States period. In essence, they were just mascots. They could give the daimyo an excuse to attack the other daimyo, and they could also confer various titles to the daimyo. The daimyo were verbally vassals, but they all wanted to go to Luo and become the shogunate general who could order the emperor around. However, the dragon palaces of the four seas were not weak to the extent that they would go to Luo, but they could not stop the growing power of the daimyo. The sea area where Lin Yuan was currently in the Endless Sea was called the Willowstone Sea, and the ruler was a lobster. A real lobster. Lin Yuan had seen the lobster patrol before. It had a human-like body with a dragon head, but its whiskers were red like arthropods. It couldn't be said that it had a human-like body because its lower body also had 6 pairs of red arthropods, but they were much thicker than ordinary lobsters. Its hands were also arthropods, and like lobsters, they didn't have claws. He was a demon king, but his aura was similar to the head warden's. He was probably an early-stage demon king, but he might not be as strong as the head warden. Because Lin Yuan couldn't feel any pressure from this lobster's bloodline. Obviously, this lobster's dragon blood wasn't pure. Anyway, it wouldn't be stronger than a pure-blooded flood dragon like him. According to the bloodline of this world's demonic beasts, the early stage of the demonic king realm was already the limit of this lobster's growth. Whether or not it could refine its demonic power and improve further still depended on its own efforts. Looking at the dragon bloodline demonic beasts, Lin Yuan wanted to say, F***ck. Why? They were all dragon bloodline demonic beasts. Even if these guys in the Endless Sea didn't cultivate, they could still grow stronger bit by bit according to the power of their bloodline. In other words, once this lobster had offspring, and if their bloodline wasn't diluted, their offspring could reach its current level even if they just ate and waited for death. If their bloodline was purified further, they could even be stronger than the lobster. This was one of the reasons why the dragon clan of the Four Seas valued bloodline. After all, the closer the bloodline of a member of the dragon clan was to the ancestor dragon, the more powerful they would be. Even if they didn't cultivate, they could reach a realm that many cultivators and demonic beasts couldn't reach in their lifetime just by growing stronger. On the other hand, Lin Yuan, who was also a dragon bloodline demonic beast and a genuine pure-blooded flood dragon, could only strengthen himself through killing. Previously, when he stayed in the northern frontier to eat and wait for death, he didn't make any progress at all. Instead, it even slowed down his growth speed. Even if he could absorb the spiritual chi of heaven and earth to cultivate, his cultivation speed was shockingly slow. At least compared to the natives of this world, the difficulty for Lin Yuan to cultivate by himself was close to that of a mortal ascending the heavens. With his current realm, if Lin Yuan relied on his innate talent to absorb the spiritual qi of heaven and earth and turn it into attribute points, even if he stayed near the green leaf water lotus all year round, he might not be able to break through to the 9th level of the Mountain Lord realm until today. Lin Yuan always felt that he was being deliberately suppressed by the system. At first, it could be explained as a matter of aptitude. After all, a black snake without a mutated bloodline, if Lin Yuan didn't possess it, according to the original arrangement, it would be eaten by low-level demonic beasts. It wouldn't be able to awaken its intelligence and start cultivating until its death, so it was understandable that its cultivation speed was slow. However, now that Lin Yuan had changed to the Flood Dragon bloodline, it wasn't just a matter of changing his skin. Therefore, his cultivation speed should have been greatly increased, but in fact, his cultivation speed was only a little faster, and it didn't have the demeanor of a dragon bloodline at all. The Sea Demon Guild, there should be one here, right? Lin Yuan's different-colored eyes moved slightly. The information about the Endless Sea came from some unlucky creatures that he had turned into Nether River creatures. He even purposely came to the Willow Stone Sea area. After all, in the sea area where he had awakened, although there were other species of the Dragon Palace in the sea area, most of them were still loyal to the Dragon Palace, like the Warden and the Fish-Headed Man. Once Lin Yuan appeared in such a sea area, he would be investigated by the Dragon Palace of the West Sea. However, the Willow Stone Sea area was different. Although it was near the evil Dragon Pond, this lobster was known to not get along with the Dragon Palace of the West Sea. For example, the other sea areas near the evil Dragon Pond were like Dali to the Song dynasty. They were said to be of the same origin, and at the same time, they admired the Dragon Palace of the West Sea. Although they didn't want to risk their lives for the Dragon Palace of the West Sea, it wasn't a problem for them to show some loyalty. On the other hand, the Willow Stone Sea area was like West Xia to the Song dynasty. They didn't get along with each other openly or secretly. This lobster even coveted the female members of the Dragon Palace of the West Sea with pure bloodline. It had more than one small-scale war with the Dragon Palace of the West Sea. There were irreconcilable conflicts between the two sides. Of course, the Willow Stone Sea area didn't have the strength to challenge the Dragon Palace of the West Sea. Although it was called a small-scale war, it was already the situation of the Willow Stone Sea area. If it weren't for the big problem of the old dominator, the Willow Stone Sea area would have been wiped out by the Dragon Palace of the West Sea. However, for now, this was indeed the best place to hide. Even if the Dragon Palace of the West Sea thought of it, they couldn't enter the Willow Stone Sea area to investigate. After carefully recalling the information given to him by the Nether River creature, Lin Yuan chose a direction and swam towards it. Chapter 690. Hello, welcome. How can I help you? As soon as he entered the Sea Demon Guild, which looked like a coral, Lin Yuan heard the greetings of the staff. The interior of the restaurant was arranged like a tavern. Groups of 2 or 3 sea monsters were scattered around the tables inside. They were either chatting or eating heartily. A small number of them were yelling about forming teams to complete missions and the like. The Sea Demon Guild was the most powerful force in the entire Endless Sea. Even the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas couldn't be compared with the Sea Demon Guild. Because the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas represented the dragon bloodline sea monsters, it could only be regarded as the most powerful group of sea monsters. However, the Sea Demon Guild represented the entire sea monster system. Any existence that was an enemy of the Sea Monster Guild was equivalent to declaring war on the entire Endless Sea. However, unlike the Demon Emperor Association in the northern frontier that was completely controlled by Lin Yuan, the Sea Demon Guild was just a nominal organization. The original organizer had passed away. To this day, there was no sign of any force. Any sea monster could entrust a mission to the Sea Demon Guild, and then the Sea Demon Guild would entrust the mission to a suitable person to carry out the mission. A simple bounty board could mobilize all the monsters in the entire sea for one's own use. Such a force could undoubtedly destroy the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas. However, the Sea Demon Guild didn't have the ability to integrate the forces scattered in the Endless Sea, so it was just a nominal organization. Even many members of the Dragon Clan belonged to the Sea Demon Guild. As long as the common interests of the members of the Sea Demon Guild were not violated, there was no need to worry about this bomb being detonated. Of course, provoking such an existence was definitely more terrifying than provoking the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas. I'm here to register as a member. Lin Yuan nodded to the octopus monster standing behind the counter and said expressionlessly. The Siren Guild did not have much cohesion, so there were almost no requirements for new members. As long as they were sea monsters and were willing to contribute to the guild, there would be no problem. There would not be any background checks. Even an unregistered member like Lin Yuan could join the Siren Guild as long as he had the strength. After completing a few missions, he could become an official guild member. At the same time, the identity of being a member of the Sea Monster Guild was an excellent identity card. After all, it was a huge organization. No one in the Endless Sea would be stupid enough to find trouble with the members of the Sea Monster Guild. After all, there were countless members of the Sea Monster Guild, regardless of whether they were powerful or had high positions. If you found trouble with the members of the Sea Monster Guild, then don't blame others for finding trouble with you. The octopus monster paused for a moment when it heard the word, member. Then, it smiled politely and said, the prerequisite for becoming a member of our guild in a foreign land is that you must be a river lord. I wonder, the Endless Sea was very big. Every day, countless sea beasts were born or died. However, no matter how turbulent the place was, it was nothing in the entire Endless Sea. Most of the sea beasts might not even step out of the sea area where they were born in their entire lives. The Willowstone Sea was also one of the oldest sea areas. The sea monster clans that settled here were almost fixed. Therefore, after Lin Yuan activated the Golden Body secret art, his flood dragon appearance that was covered with golden scales became more and more conspicuous. At first glance, it was obvious that he was not a local sea monster. Therefore, the octopus monster asked this question. When one's cultivation reached the River Lord level, although it was not enough to walk unhindered in every sea area, it was definitely a mainstay. When one's cultivation reached this level, even the ruler of a sea area would have to treat them with respect. If there was no big trouble, they would not go to other sea areas. After all, who would be willing to leave their home if they could become a big shot at their own home? Moreover, the Sea Monster Guild was spread all over the Endless Sea. If one joined the Sea Monster Guild in the place where they were born, there was no need to check one's cultivation. They just had to say hello and that was it. When they returned, they would receive a member's seal to prove their identity. If one was interested in joining the Sea Monster Guild, they would not wait until their cultivation had reached the River Lord level before going to another sea area to join. Lin Yuan was obviously a foreign monster. If he wanted to join the Sea Monster Guild, then he was obviously in big trouble. If he really had a River Lord level cultivation, then he was not someone a small staff member like the octopus could make the decision. It was a good opportunity to throw the blame away. Cultivation. Late-stage River Lord level. That should be enough. Lin Yuan did not seem to see the complex expression in the octopus monster's eyes. He directly revealed his aura. Almost instantly, the weaker demonic beasts nearby couldn't help but tremble. Although the upper limit of the Endless Sea's martial strength was very high, it did not mean that all monsters were born with great power. Only monsters in foreign lands needed to be tested to register as a member, but local monsters did not need to. Thus, most of the monsters present had not yet reached the River Lord level. Most of them were in the Wisdom and Lightning realm, and there were even a few in the Spirit Awakening realm. There were no mountains in the Endless Sea, so they naturally did not call them Mountain Lords. Instead, they called them River Lords. However, Lin Yuan did not understand why a group of sea kings would call him River Lord. Perhaps only demonic kings could be considered sea kings. Alright, I've already roughly determined your cultivation base. Please retract your aura. River Lord level experts usually carry out missions alone. They will only come to the guild's stronghold to hand in missions. Thus, your aura will have a big impact on the other members here. I will report your situation to the headquarters, but I cannot give you a reply on whether you can register as a member or not. However, before the headquarters reply, I will arrange food and accommodation for you according to the standards of a River Lord level member. The octopus monster nodded at Lin Yuan with a complicated expression. Late-stage River Lord level with a powerful aura. It was clearly not just for show. It was only one step away from the demonic king level. For such an existence to suddenly want to join the Sea Demon Guild, there was clearly a lot of trouble behind it. Although the Sea Monster Guild was a big organization, and they weren't afraid of anyone in the endless sea, it didn't seem like a creature with normal intelligence to protect someone for no reason. Therefore, it still needed time to observe and determine what kind of trouble this strange demon beast was carrying. Only then could it decide whether to absorb it or not. Sorry to trouble you. Lin Yuan nodded slightly and said politely. This was within his expectations. However, although his appearance had not changed, his scales had turned from black to gold. Compared to the black Jiao from before, it was more believable to say that they were two different species. Thus, he was not in a hurry. Chapter 691. Please come with me. The octopus monster summoned a colleague to take his place and then took the initiative to walk out from behind the counter. Although it was not sure whether to recruit Lin Yuan for the time being, he had the cultivation of the late-stage River Lord after all. If he went one step further and became the ruler of a sea area, even the higher-ups of the Siren Guild would have to contact him and strive to open a branch in the sea area he controlled. Therefore, no matter what the result was, the Siren Guild would try not to offend him. Lin Yuan did not speak and just silently followed behind the octopus monster. By the way, I forgot to mention that the members of the Siren Guild have a classification system, from black iron to diamond. Outsiders judge the members' level by the material of the identity seal. For example, those who take out the black iron seal are black iron members. This type of member has the lowest authority. For example, for the same mission, a higher-level member has priority over a black iron member. In addition to the priority of the mission, this authority also includes the treatment of the Siren Guild itself. For example, for a mission, the employer will give 10 Eastern Pearls as a reward. Black iron members will take 60% of the reward, bronze members will take 50%. If it is a diamond member, the Siren Guild will not take any commission. After all, a mission that requires a diamond member to take action can be said to be a threat to the entire endless sea. This level of mission is usually directly issued by the guild to the diamond members, and the remuneration is also directly paid by the guild. In addition to the treatment, there is also the intelligence authority. Different intelligence is classified into different levels, and the corresponding intelligence can only be accessed by the corresponding level. If it is a black iron member, he can only access the first-level intelligence and has to pay a considerable price. However, diamond members are different from other members. Not only do they have the right to access all the intelligence, but the guild will also take the initiative to provide additional intelligence. As the octopus monster walked, it introduced some basic knowledge to Lin Yuan. Lin Yuan raised his eyelids and almost opened his mouth, but no words came out. He always felt that this guy seemed to be hinting at something. In other words, it had been deliberately touting the benefits of being a diamond member and constantly guiding Lin Yuan to be a diamond member. But soon, Lin Yuan figured out the crux of the matter. After all, the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas was now being troubled by the Great Old Ones. Then, it was impossible for the Siren Guild, which was also a behemoth, to not know about the appearance of the Great Old Ones. An opponent of this level could obviously threaten the entire endless sea. It seemed that the Siren Guild was also lacking in combat power. If it were any other time, the Siren Guild would never say such things. After all, it was such a huge organization. Even if it was a guild, the necessary expenses could not be that low. They were counting on the mission rewards from the low-level members to continue the existence of the guild. How could they persuade the new members to level up as soon as possible? Lin Yuan, in particular, was a late-stage river lord. He was practically the perfect fighter. If he remained a Black Iron member for the rest of his life, the Siren Guild's upper echelons would probably wake up laughing from their dreams. We're here. The octopus monster led Lin Yuan to a building that also looked like a coral stone and said in a deep voice, "This is one of the reserve bases prepared by our guild. Because it hasn't been used for a long time, we've been ordered to make it look like a hotel to receive you or guild members who come from other sea regions to carry out missions. But for now, you're the only one staying here. The others are all carrying out missions outside. Even if they come back, they rarely come here to rest." At this point, it changed the topic and continued, "Wherever the Siren Guild exists, there will be such hotels. In the future, if you go to other sea regions to carry out missions, you can contact the local staff. They will take you to rest." Okay. Lin Yuan nodded again to show that he understood. After a while, Lin Yuan said slowly, "Although I don't know why, I feel that you seem to believe that I can become a member of the Siren Guild. That's why you're telling me this, isn't it?" The octopus monster did not show any abnormal expression. It just nodded slightly and said, "Something has happened in the Endless Sea. Now, high-level combat power can be said to be a scarce resource. If you're willing to join, it's actually our honor." But, before it finished speaking, the octopus monster put on a serious expression and said in a deep voice, "The upper echelons are thirsty for top-level combat power. If you really want to join us, the upper echelons will not reject you. However, if a powerhouse like you suddenly wants to join the Siren Guild, there will definitely be a lot of trouble behind it. The upper echelons need time to observe. After all, the current situation is not stable. Even the Siren Guild does not want to go to war with other forces easily." Okay. Lin Yuan did not comment on the octopus monster's words. He just nodded perfunctorily. Anyway, the West Sea Dragon Palace could not enter the Willowstone region unscrupulously. Otherwise, the lobster in the Willowstone region would attack the members of the West Sea Dragon Palace crazily without needing him to do anything. If he just waited for a while, Lin Yuan didn't think that any trouble would come to him. After he joined the Siren Guild and became a member with a high level, even if the West Sea Dragon Palace knew his identity, they would have to think twice before making a move on him. Although the Siren Guild was loose, if you bullied them, the members of the Siren Guild would not let it go. After all, who knew if the member who was bullied today would be himself tomorrow? Okay, then that's it. I'll ask someone to send you a registration form later. The octopus monster led Lin Yuan to his room and said with a smile, "Our guild does not require members to report their real identity. So, you can also give yourself a code name to communicate with other members." Okay. Lin Yuan grinned and showed a ferocious smile to the octopus monster. Then, he strode into the room and opened his naked eye and eye of God at the same time. He looked at the interior of the room. After confirming that there was no problem in every corner, Lin Yuan walked into the room and lazily coiled his body. There were several formations in the room. One of them was a formation that could adjust the temperature according to one's thoughts after injecting demonic power. It was similar to the air conditioner in Lin Yuan's previous life. This setting was obviously very friendly to cold-blooded creatures like Lin Yuan. He didn't need to waste time in the hot sea to adjust his body temperature. There was also a simple spirit-gathering formation. Although the effect was far inferior to the green leaf water lotus, it was still a luxurious thing. Even the human side might not be so generous to set up a small spirit-gathering formation in a hotel room. Chapter 692. Although there were only a few small formations, which could barely be called formations after simplification, the cost of operating such a hotel, even if there was only one room open, was astronomical. From this point of view, the wealth of the Sea Demon Guild was definitely not lower than that of the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas. It was just that the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas liked to invest a lot of wealth in the construction of the Dragon Palace, which shocked people at first glance. The Sea Demon Guild, on the other hand, preferred a calm and low-key style. Although it looked like coral on the outside, it was a different world inside. Compared to the fancy decorations of the Dragon Palace, the Sea Demon Guild obviously paid more attention to practicality. With these formations in the room, who would refuse to stay in the Sea Demon Hotel? If not for the fact that most of the members of the Sea Demon Guild were out on missions, the Sea Demon Hotel where Lin Yuan was staying would definitely not be so deserted. After all, the expenses here were obviously not something that ordinary monsters could afford. Tisk, extravagant. Lin Yuan grinned slightly. After adjusting the temperature, he slowly fell asleep. He still had a lot of things to consider, and it was inevitable that there would be distracting thoughts when he was awake. It was better to be in a state of deep sleep to think. Although his consciousness had returned to chaos, the Eye of God was still open. Once there was a strong presence of hostility nearby, Lin Yuan would be the first to wake up. He also used his tempered monster power to set up a few traps in the room. Once touched, they would immediately explode. The power was no less than the full blow of a powerhouse of the River Lord realm. He ensured that even if someone broke in, they would be forced back by the traps at the first moment, and would not take advantage of the fact that Lin Yuan was not completely awake to directly attack him. After doing all this, Lin Yuan fell into a state of deep sleep. Guilds, this was an organization structure that could not be avoided in all the novels that Lin Yuan had read in his previous life. After personally coming to this world, Lin Yuan realized the advantages and disadvantages of the guild system. Even though the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas was extremely wealthy, it was impossible for them to raise all the beasts in the Endless Sea to be their fighters. If the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas did that, there would be no need for war or any other reason. Just the daily needs of these beasts would be enough to drag the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas into the abyss of destruction. Therefore, although the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas was the overlord of the Endless Sea, they were only friendly to the dragon tribe. Even if it was a demonic beast with dragon blood, as long as its bloodline was not pure, it was still a slave in the eyes of the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas. This was also the reason why the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas did not have a good reputation. However, with a guild system, they could easily do something that the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas could not. To put it simply, the guild did not need to spend a lot of money to support fighters. Its only task was to contact the employer and the idle executor, and then judge whether the latter had the strength to complete the task entrusted by the employer. Then, it would take an intermediary fee from the task reward. In addition, it would set up an intelligence agency. The guild hotel where Lin Yuan stayed would charge extra, and a large amount of wealth and resources could be accumulated in a short period of time. Moreover, this wealth would come from the low-level members of the guild and would be used to support the high-level members. In this way, it would ensure that the position of the Sea Demon Guild would not be shaken, and it would also be able to get first-hand information and so on. However, this method of the Sea Demon Guild would not cause any dissatisfaction. Because all guilds had the same philosophy. As long as you had enough ability and were willing to pay, even if you were from a humble background, the guild could provide you with enough cultivation resources. It could even be said that most of the cultivators from humble backgrounds were related to some guilds, and the rest were valued by aristocratic families and given resources to cultivate. Otherwise, the disciples of humble backgrounds would not be qualified to cultivate at all. And the Sea Demon Guild was doing something similar in the Endless Sea. Perhaps this was the reason why the beasts in the Endless Sea were more powerful than those on land? Compared to the beasts in the Endless Sea, the beasts on land were indeed several generations behind. However, the hidden dangers of this guild system were also present. Even a force as large as the Sea Demon Guild could only watch as the Dragon Clan of the Four Seas dominated the Endless Sea. When facing some of the weaker rulers of the sea demons, they had to put in a good word for them, and even give up a part of the benefits to be able to open a branch in the sea area controlled by the other party. It was precisely because he saw the pros and cons of the guild system that Lin Yuan kept the Association of the Demon Emperor as an organization and put it among the people. At the same time, he ensured that he had full control over the association of the Demon Emperor. Controlling the guild meant that he didn't have to pay any price to control those idle cultivators who were unwilling to be the vanguard. No matter if it was a big or small matter, as long as he paid enough, he could make these guild members go and be cannon fodder. And these rewards usually came from these guild members themselves. Apart from the necessary investment in the early stages, the association of the Demon Emperor was now on the path of freeloading. Most of the time, they could even transfer some funds to support the construction of the northern frontier. However, the guild wasn't so easy to control. For example, after Lin Yuan established the association of the Demon Emperor and stabilized his position in the northern frontier, he immediately exterminated the Demon Subduer Guild and the Mercenary Guild. It wasn't simply because they were beasts, but because such a large guild wasn't something that the northern frontier could control. Therefore, it was better to replace them with their own people and start from scratch. The Dragon Palace of the Four Seas obviously couldn't control the Sea Demon Guild. They once had a chance. After all, a species that could enslave the entire Endless Sea would have no problem controlling a new Sea Demon Guild. However, the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas gave up on this opportunity. Therefore, the Sea Demon Guild of the Four Seas grew into a force even stronger than the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas. Although the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas should have taken remedial measures, for the Sea Demon Guild, it was just giving up some control of the sea to the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas. Even though many of the guild's senior members were members of the Dragon Clan, in fact, the decision-making power of the Sea Demon Guild was still in the hands of the powerful sea demons that had nothing to do with the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas. They wouldn't give the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas any chance to invade the guild. At this point, Lin Yuan slowly woke up from his deep slumber. After removing the traps and other arrangements, Lin Yuan murmured, "The Sea Demon Guild and the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas don't have much connection. They are even enemies. Then, can I use the name of the Sea Demon Guild to cultivate my own force?" His multicolored eyes flashed, and Lin Yuan's mind gradually became active. Although he didn't have a background of sea beasts, and couldn't casually recruit wandering sea beasts, as a member of God, he could create his own clan. With the power of these clans, it should be more than enough to control a few seas, right? Chapter 693. The system had once commented that the human race created by Nuwa was the closest to perfection. Lin Yuan had no hope of creating a race that surpassed human beings. Even in dreams, one had to have a sense of propriety, didn't they? However, it was not a problem for Lin Yuan to create a clan of monsters with powerful bloodlines. System, I want to create a clan. Do you have any suggestions? Lin Yuan pondered for a moment and began to summon the system in his heart. The host has a clergy officially conferred by the human ruler of this world, and the means to steadily earn incense power. Theoretically, you can indeed create your own clan. However, the strength of the clan is directly related to the amount of incense power invested by the host. In addition, if it is not a race defined by the host, the clan will be created according to the host's own bloodline. It is recommended that the host upgrade his bloodline to a higher level before considering creating a clan. The system responded immediately. Clan was a very strange thing. They could be extremely powerful, but they could also disappear in the long river of history without anyone noticing. Therefore, ever since Nuwa created humans, a large number of gods and immortals would rather benefit a certain area and harvest the faith of some humans than try to create their own clan. After all, the difference between the investment and the return was simply too great. Theoretically speaking, since Goddess Nviwa created human beings, they would provide her with a large amount of incense power even if they did not believe in Goddess Nviwa. This was also the story of Goddess Nviwa becoming a saint in the untainted land. Similar to preaching to become a saint, it was used to harvest incense power. However, in the entire untainted world, who else could become a saint by relying on a clan other than Nuwa? Even after the great god Pan-gu created the world and died, the wizard clan formed by his flesh and blood disappeared in the long river of history. Wasn't the wizard clan strong? Not to mention the 12 ancestors of sorcery, even Hou-Yi, Kuo-Fu, and other senior sorcerers were all well-known figures in deepening. But what was the result? Didn't they still perish in the river of time? It was not impossible for Lin Yuan to create his own clan, but even if he created it, it would only be a species of the flood dragon, which was neither advanced nor low-level. It was just like the 9 sons of the dragon, each with a different plate. They may have certain abilities, but they may not even be counted as part of the dragon race. Although the story of the dragon's 9 sons did not refer to a clan, the principle was universal. It was the same for Lin Yuan. He might only create some non-flood dragons and pythons. Moreover, the purity of the bloodline was not high and needed a large amount of investment to gradually grow. From a rational point of view, the system really felt that when Lin Yuan's bloodline was further improved, the cost-effectiveness of creating a dragon species would be far better than creating a clan now. System, I've read many stories. Do you know what's the biggest difference between the clan created by the gods and the human races created by Nuwa? Lin Yuan crossed his body and asked with a playful look in his eyes. Were humans really strong? Or, were humans really a perfect race? He had thought about this question for a long time. Although he had the answer now, it still could not be used as evidence. However, from his point of view, he could only believe this. Otherwise, he would never be able to take that step, because no clan could surpass humans. This sentence was true. The system slowly typed a question mark. For some reason, it always felt that there was something wrong with Lin Yuan. Weak. Lin Yuan narrowed his eyes slightly. Huan gave an answer that the system could not understand at all. Survival is the innate characteristic of all living creatures. Every minute and every second, the living creatures in the world are working hard to survive. All species are constantly evolving to adapt themselves to this world. This evolution process makes these living creatures stronger and more perfect. Throughout history, countless empires would suddenly weaken and collapse after reaching the peak of their strength. This saying is also applicable to a clan. When a clan becomes a supreme existence, it will usher in a stage of self-destruction. I believe that all the worlds ruled by humans have similar backstories. A long time ago, the world was controlled by all kinds of powerful creatures. Humans were always at the bottom of the food chain. After a long time, those powerful creatures gradually died out, becoming a story that no one would believe even if it was told. However, most of the worlds fell into the control of humans. This is not because of the lies made up by novelists in my previous life. For example, the power of technology surpassed the power of mystery, the spiritual energy of heaven and earth became scarce, and the powerful creatures either died, went into hiding, or left. Perhaps what they said is one of the truths. However, there has always been only one reason why humans could rise and become the ruler of all worlds. Lin Yuan's eyes flashed, and he said in a deep voice, because they are weak enough. At first, the system did not understand Lin Yuan's words and still gave a question mark. But soon, the system figured out the hidden meaning in Lin Yuan's words. Because humans were weak, they could rely on all the powerful clans in order to survive. Coupled with their adaptability and intelligence as the foundation, they learned the strength of the powerful clans bit by bit. Whether it was cultivation or technology, they studied it out of reverence. Therefore, after a long time of change, the powerful creatures remained stagnant while the weak humans grew stronger day by day. In the end, humans relied on the various powerful forces they learned and overthrew the rulers of the old era, announcing the arrival of the human era. This law was applicable to all the worlds where humans existed. As long as those powerful clans were willing to let humans survive and did not strangle them in the cradle, then the ones who would dominate the world would definitely be humans. However, with the innate arrogance of powerful creatures, they only had eyes for other powerful creatures. For weak creatures like humans, as long as they could find a way to please them, they wouldn't do anything to destroy the entire human race. Seeking to survive was a common characteristic of all creatures. Before the prosperity and destruction of a species, dignity, will, and freedom were nothing more than laughable extravagant hopes. It was also because of this weakness that allowed humans to continuously improve and eventually become the overlords of all worlds. Was it really good to create powerful creatures the moment they were born? This question slowly appeared in the system's blind spot. Was this also part of your plan? Nuwa, you are really something. Chapter 694. You've seen through Nuwa's strategy, so you intend to create a weak race to surpass the so-called perfect race known as humans? The system asked once more. Lin Yuan remained silent for a moment. What the hell is that look? Do I look like an idiot asking that? The system roared after a moment, appearing flustered and exasperated. No, there's no such possibility. Theoretically speaking, no one could create a clan weaker than humans. Without external influence, the longest lifespan of a human would hover around 100 years. Moreover, there's a huge difference between individuals, and even siblings could be completely different. For example, one could be a genius, while the other could be a retard. For humans, extreme innate talent is required, whether it's martial arts, cultivation, mathematics, or research. With the human population's immeasurably massive base, the chances of elite talents being born are pitifully low. Even if their average intelligence is not low and they are highly adaptable, they are mediocre if they do not rise to the top. Therefore, most humans were still ants that could be easily crushed to death by powerful creatures. If I didn't have an urgent problem to solve, perhaps I could develop my spawns in the direction of weak and have them try to emulate humans to become more perfect creatures. But it's clear that creating such weak spawns now would only result in rapid death, wasting the power of Joss flames. Lin Yuan waved his hand, a look of regret showing in his eyes. If he had a plan, he really wanted to try and see if he could create an existence that was more perfect than humans. Even if he could not create a race comparable to the dragons, he must have sufficient combat ability under the current circumstances, or it would be a waste of time and Joss flame. Lin Yuan slowly closed his eyes and began to mold a humanoid model in his mind according to his imagination. It was only after he had a general framework that he began to perfect the details of the model bit by bit. He was about 1.8 meters tall and had a streamlined body. Every muscle contained a powerful explosive force. However, these muscles were not bulky and looked rather restrained. You're really a profiteer, aren't you? Lin Yuan complained even as he continued to mold the model. It was just a rough framework that did not carry any special abilities. Just building this body alone cost 318 points of Joss flame power. Without any special abilities, the body that was molded would probably be the standard of a healthy normal person in his previous life. It might be a little more resistant, but most of its attributes would be no different from normal humans. Wasn't it too lousy to make such a thing? Following Lin Yuan's thoughts, the model began to change slowly, gray scales covering the body. An attribute interface also appeared before Lin Yuan. Race information: race, unnamed, low-level species, type, subhuman level, lower-grade profession, no specific profession talent, underwater breathing skills, none abilities, beginner swimming, dragonman physique, 1-5, 1 point for adult humans, strength, 2, 3, 1 for adult humans, agility, 0, 4 to 1. 1, land/water, spirit, 0, 4, low level, evaluation, an extremely weak amphibious species summon, 318 Joss flame. As Lin Yuan's race, they were born with a certain amount of water dragon bloodline, and their attributes were slightly stronger than normal humans. There were even abilities and talents that didn't require Lin Yuan to spend extra attribute points to customize. In Lin Yuan's previous life, if there were enough of these attributes, they might be able to dominate. However, in this world where the strength value wasn't just a little bit higher, these races might not even be able to beat a Spirit Awakening Realm level 1 monster beast. Their combat strength was probably equivalent to a carnivorous beast. Although strengthening to this point wasn't the limit, if possible, Lin Yuan could even buy all the talents, specialties, and skills from the system to directly bring the race's combat strength to the maximum. However, there was no point in doing so. Because no matter how powerful the race was, it would only be meaningful if it was successfully summoned. A race like this that was like a piece of trash would consume 318 Joss flame power. It could be imagined that if he wanted to meet Lin Yuan's requirements, even if it was the lowest standard, the amount of Joss flame power needed to summon a race could instantly empty Lin Yuan's savings. Beginner swimming has advanced to intermediate swimming. Increased active skill seawater essence, passive skill severe pain, talent skill learning, passive skill devour, strength attribute increase, agility attribute increase. Lin Yuan browsed through the race's ability store while quickly weighing the pros and cons and issuing strengthening instructions one by one. Spending Joss flame power to strengthen the race wasn't a one-time thing. As long as Lin Yuan had enough Joss flame power, he could still improve his race in all aspects in the future. However, it had to be said that the system was a qualified profiteer, and it was quite generous when it came to tricking people. The first time he created a race, all the abilities he bought were 20% off. It was obvious that the system had prepared a marketing strategy to tempt the host to spend a lot. Perhaps some hosts had unknowingly created a race that they couldn't summon in a short period of time. And this wasn't the worst part. What was the worst part? Apart from the first time he created a race, every time he spent Joss flame power to strengthen a race, the cost wasn't 100%, but 150%. It roughly meant that if he didn't buy enough abilities the first time, the extra price he had to pay the next time he strengthened a race would be enough to make him vomit blood. With abilities installed one by one, the model in Lin Yuan's mind began to change. The male still looked about 1.8 meters tall, while the female's height was reduced to 1.7 meters. Moreover, the female's muscle lines were obviously much softer than the male's. After paying a certain amount of strength and physique as the price, the two attributes of agility and spirit were increased. In addition to the human-like appearance, the race also had a pair of huge bat wings extending from its back. Yes, that's right. Lin Yuan even added wings to his race, intending to create a trispecies that could live on land, sea, and air to fight for him. However, a pair of bat wings that could barely be used to fly cost Lin Yuan 1,000 points of incense power, which was his biggest expense at the moment. If it weren't for the fact that the race could reproduce through both sexes after it was created, and that it could provide Lin Yuan with Joss flame power as an intelligent creature, Lin Yuan obviously wouldn't do such a losing deal. Chapter 695. Clan Tribe Information Race, Grayscaled Flood Dragon Person, Low-Level Species, Type, Subhuman Level, Rank 1 Upper Profession, No Specific Profession Talent, Underwater Breathing, Learning, Optical Camouflage Skill, Seawater Essence, Tide Summoning, Severe Pain, Devour, Sudden Thrust, Seed Explosion Skill, Advanced Swimming, Flood Dragon Person Scaly Armor, Short Flight, Intermediate Regeneration Physique, 6, 5, Adult Human, 1 point, Strength, 8, 9, Adult Human, 1 point, Agility, 3, 3/8. 2/4. 5, Land, Water, Sky, Spirit, 3, Low-Level Intelligence, has the potential to become a spellcaster, Evaluation, an extremely weak amphibious species. Summoning cost, 2,541 incense power talent skill, Underwater Breathing. This creature has the bloodline of an aquatic demon beast and can absorb oxygen from water since birth. Even if it does not rise to the surface to breathe fresh air for a long time, it can still maintain a clear mind and efficient movement ability. Learning, this creature has a certain level of intelligence and can improve its abilities in all aspects through learning. If there are books, videos, and other teaching materials, this creature's learning speed will increase by 20%. Optical Camouflage, a powerful talent ability. This creature can change its body color through optical effects. If it remains motionless for a long time, it will automatically change the color of the surrounding environment and disappear from the enemy's sight. It has a good effect regardless of whether it is used to wait for prey or to escape the pursuit of strong enemies. Active skill, seawater essence. As a member of the aquatic demon beast, this creature has a natural affinity with water and can quickly use its skin to absorb water to recover from injuries. Especially when it absorbs seawater, the healing effect will increase by 10%. Sudden thrust. When this creature is holding a sharp weapon, it can launch a sudden thrust to perform a short displacement. The specific displacement distance is calculated by multiplying its agility attribute by 5. If the thrust hits the target, the damage value will be calculated by multiplying its agility attribute by 3. Seed explosion. This creature has the bloodline of a high-level demon beast in its body. In a life and death situation, it can choose to unleash its bloodline power to obtain a large increase in attributes. After activating the skill, all attributes will increase by 50% for 15 minutes. After the skill is used up, it will enter a weakened state and all attributes will decrease by 70% for 3 days. Passive skill, Tide Summoning. This creature has an affinity with the water element. If it is near a water source, when it makes a sound, there is a certain probability of causing a tide. When this creature reaches a certain number, it can easily summon a tsunami. Severe pain. Every time this creature attacks an enemy, there is a 15% chance of inflicting 10% additional damage and causing the enemy to feel as if they are being pricked by needles. Has an extremely high deterrent effect on cowards. Devour. This ability will be automatically activated when the life form eats. Increase digestion efficiency by 20%. When eating phase of the same level, the life form will obtain greater benefits than other phase. Abilities. Frownyface. Advanced Swimming. This creature has an advanced swimming ability. Its movement speed in the water will be greatly increased. If this ability is activated, it will consume a lot of stamina, but its movement speed will be increased by 3 times underwater. Dragonman Scale Armor. This is an ability that this creature inherited from their father god. The gray scale armor on their body has a certain level of defense. Although it does not provide any attribute bonuses, when the scales are intact, this creature will have 20% damage immunity. Short Flight. The creature has a pair of huge bat wings on its back, but they cannot support the creature's flight for a long time. If there are no external influences, the creature can fly for a quarter of an hour. Intermediate Regeneration. This creature has a very strong recovery ability. Even if the wound on its abdomen is cut open, as long as the wound does not worsen, it will be able to fully recover in less than half an hour. However, this recovery ability is not invincible. Severed limb injuries cannot be healed through this ability. The above were the attributes of the spawn tribe that Lin Yuan had strengthened. It had to be said that this interface was still trash, but compared to when Lin Yuan had just arrived in this world, these spawn tribe were considered extremely powerful. At the very least, they could fight against demon beasts below the Wisdom Enlightenment realm. Their speed was also rather good. If both sides were to fight underwater, even if the spawn tribe did not use their advanced swimming ability, their speed would be at the peak of the Spirit Awakening realm. Phew. Lin Yuan let out a long breath and glanced at his Joss Flame model. He said in a deep voice, "Let's set it like this for the time being. Summon 4 spawn tribe for me, 3 males and 1 female." As soon as he said that, Lin Yuan saw his Joss Flame power constantly jumping and finally stopping at a pitiful 2. 4 gray-scaled flood dragon people also appeared in Lin Yuan's sight. "We pay our respects to the great Blackwater Dragon King, the one and only divine king of the Northern Frontier Divine System, the father of the gray-scaled flood dragon people." As soon as the 4 spawn tribe walked out of the white light condensed by the system, they all knelt on the ground toward Lin Yuan. As the spawn tribe that Lin Yuan had personally created, their loyalty to Lin Yuan was unshakable. Just like the first batch of humans that Nuwa had created back then, they all worshipped Nuwa as the mother of humanity. In other words, these spawn tribe that Lin Yuan had personally created were naturally fanatical believers of Lin Yuan. Each of them could provide 5 Joss Flame power to Lin Yuan every day. However, this loyalty was limited to the spawn tribe that Lin Yuan had personally created. Whether the descendants of the Spawn tribe would still believe in Lin Yuan, the Blackwater Dragon King, would depend on Lin Yuan's own methods. Nuwa could still be used as an example. According to myths and legends, Nuwa, who had created humans, should have been the most powerful existence among the gods, especially after humans had unified the heavens and 10,000 worlds. However, in reality, Nuwa had always been below Hongjun. She was not even the most powerful existence among the few saints. This was because when humans talked about Nuwa, most of them still treated her as a made-up existence. Among the descendants of the first batch of Spawn tribe, there were not many who believed in Nuwa. Compared to Nuwa, the 3 sovereigns and 5 emperors, who had made great contributions to the human race, they were more like some kind of idealized existence in the eyes of humans. However, if you were to ask a human who they would believe in if there were really gods in the world, most humans would probably tell you without hesitation that they would choose the god of fortune. There might also be many other random gods. However, what was certain was that they would rather choose a god that could bring them practical benefits than believe in a mother of humanity that could not bring them any benefits. It was just that realistic. Lin Yuan did not wish to follow in Nuwa's footsteps, so he would not raise his own Spawn tribe. In fact, when creating the Spawn tribe, Lin Yuan had already drawn up a series of plans to maximize the benefits that the Spawn tribe could bring. Chapter 696. In addition, relying on the clan tribe to harvest incense power seemed very profitable, but it was not the case. First of all, summoning a clan tribe required a large amount of incense power. Although there was a certain return, there was a limit to the clan tribe's lifespan. For example, the current gray-scaled flood dragon person would die of old age at the age of 20 if there was no external influence. In other words, a clan tribe that died of old age could provide 36,500 incense power just by calculating the supply of faith. However, that was not how the accounts were calculated. The clan tribes that Lin Yuan created could not possibly be in their infancy. Every one of them was truly in their prime. In other words, when these clan tribes were summoned, their actual age was already over 5 years old, and the older ones might be 8 years old. Furthermore, the clan tribes themselves were not existences from some advanced civilization. Once a clan tribe exceeded the age of 15, their bodily functions would be greatly reduced, and they would not even be able to rely on themselves to catch prey to fill their stomachs. If the clan tribe was rich, they would still be able to eat, but if the clan tribe was not rich, they might even become food for other clan tribes. Even if Lin Yuan was willing to raise old clan tribes, they would most likely not be able to live to the point of dying of old age. They might not even live to the point where they could not hunt anymore. This was because the meaning of their existence was to charge and break through enemy lines for Lin Yuan. In addition, although the clan tribes could cultivate, their main way to improve was to constantly fight, just like characters in games. They accumulated experience through fighting, and then Lin Yuan would use incense power to upgrade them so that the clan tribe's abilities would be improved in all aspects. At present, this was the only way for the clan tribes to improve. Even for a race like the human race that was famous for its high intelligence and comprehension ability, if they wanted to cultivate a powerful cultivator, they would need to invest a large amount of resources and decades, or even centuries of time. The Northern Frontier Academy was still crying piteously for food. Lin Yuan was already under pressure to maintain the Northern Frontier's daily consumption. If the clan tribes also came to consume the phase stored in the Northern Frontier, it might not be long before even the Northern Territory Chamber of Commerce's transactions could not be maintained. In addition, even if there were no problems in terms of resources, Lin Yuan could not invest too much in the clan tribes. After all, the system had already determined that they had low intelligence when they had as low as 3 points of spirit. The so-called potential to become a spell caster was just to tell Lin Yuan that the gray-scaled flood dragon person could barely cultivate. However, their aptitude was there. Even if Lin Yuan spent a lot of money, he would not be able to create a super powerhouse. Before the gray-scaled flood dragon person's potential reached a certain level, they were destined to be consumables on the battlefield. They could be said to be large consumers of Joss flames in all aspects. However, even if they were lucky, some of the clan tribes had experienced hundreds of battles and were piled up into powerhouses by Lin Yuan's Joss flames, but it was still useless. Even a demon king's clan tribe could only provide 5 points of Joss flames a day. Furthermore, demon kings would also die of old age. The more he invested, the more he would lose when the clan tribe died of old age. Ever since he activated the clan tribe model, Lin Yuan felt that this thing might not be as useful as the soldier creation function. No matter how much he invested in the beginning, there was a high probability that he would not be able to recoup the cost in the end. He might even suffer a huge loss. Forget it. There are pros and cons. At least you can reproduce and grow on your own. The things that come out of the soldier creation function can only rely on me to instill attribute points. Moreover, compared to you, they can only do not harm me. They might not be 100% loyal to me in their hearts. Lin Yuan sighed. With the word fanatic here, Lin Yuan did not have to worry about the loyalty of his clan tribes at all. After all, the history of the West in his previous life had proven countless times that fanatics were a very scary thing. They could even abandon everything for the god they believed in. Wealth, fame, family, to them, all of these were not as important as the words of the gods. Even if they could not obtain any benefits, as long as they could please the god they believed in, these fanatics would be able to put on their armor and go to the other side of the world to conquer their god's enemies. Great Father, please give us your oracle. We will do our best to share your burden. The 4 gray-scaled flood dragon people bowed once again and said to Lin Yuan in a deep voice. Right now, you are still too weak. Go around this sea region and take a look. If there are suitable prey, kill it without hesitation. When the time is right, I will bestow you with greater power. Lin Yuan glanced at the 4 gray-scaled flood dragon people and immediately made a judgment in his heart. Although the attribute models of the two sides were not quite the same, with Lin Yuan's strength, he could determine that the 4 weaklings in front of him were actually around the 6th level of the Spirit Awakening realm just by sensing their qi. This kind of strength was at the bottom of the food chain in the Endless Sea. Fortunately, their strength was low and there were no requirements for the strength of their enemies. Even if they killed sea beasts that had not been awakened, they could still gain experience. We obey Father's orders. The 4 gray-scaled flood dragon people bowed once again and slowly left the hotel Lin Yuan was in. The attitude of the Sea Demon Guild was very ambiguous. They did not want to miss out on a powerful force like Lin Yuan, but they were also not willing to be the scapegoat for Lin Yuan. Thus, after giving Lin Yuan the pancakes, they directly left Lin Yuan in the hotel. There was not a single spy nearby, so Lin Yuan did not have to worry about the trouble of his 4 spawn tribes being targeted. It was clear that the Sea Demon Guild was worried that Lin Yuan's enemies would come knocking soon, so they decided to stay out of it for the time being. If the other party was really powerful and the Sea Demon Guild knew that this was the Sea Demon Hotel and still attacked Lin Yuan, then the Sea Demon Guild would have to reconsider whether it was worth offending an even more powerful opponent for Lin Yuan. Seeing his Joss flame power return to 0, Lin Yuan helplessly stretched his body. His different-colored eyes were filled with a hint of mockery. He wondered if there were any existences in the Endless Sea that were willing to trade with him. Right now, he needed a large amount of Joss flame power. The act of creating spawn tribes made things worse for Lin Yuan, who was not rich to begin with. The number of 4 spawn tribes was still too small. It was impossible for them to grow in a short period of time. After all, weak existences could only kill weaker existences in a one-on-one battle. When facing strong existences, they needed more people to surround and kill them. Otherwise, they could only stand aside obediently and watch their prey swagger away. Even if he did not need to increase the number of spawn tribes in a short period of time, with the current income of Joss flame power, he might not even have enough Joss flame power for the gray-scaled flood dragon people to evolve. Ever since he devoured the fate of the Shenwu dynasty, Lin Yuan once again felt what poverty was. Chapter 697. At the same time. Northern Frontier, Northern Battlefront Army Camp. Li Zhong was sitting in the commander's tent. On his left were Luo Su, Yi Balan, Zhang Xiuzhu, and other powerful people in the Northern Frontier intelligence system. On the other side were some officials from the Northern Frontier families and the people in charge of the Northern Territory Chamber of Commerce. They had all received Li Zhong's order and put down their work to come to the Northern Battlefront Army Camp. On his right side were Qin Yu, Zhao Guangcheng, Gao Buzhen, Men Du, and other military leaders in the Northern Frontier. On the other side were the newly promoted generals of the Northern Battlefront Army. Except for Li Zhongsheng, who was still directing the construction of the Great Wall project and fighting against the Frost Mirror Barbarian, almost all the generals in the Northern Frontier were here. Today, I've called all of you here for two reasons. Li Zhong slowly raised a finger and said, "First, Lord Dragon King is in danger in the Endless Sea. According to the information from the Ministry of Works, Lord Dragon King might not be able to get out in a short time. So, during this time, I will be in charge of everything in the Northern Frontier. Let me tell you the ugly truth first. I advise you to be honest and don't have any bad ideas." As soon as he finished speaking, everyone's expression changed slightly. It was hard to say what was going on with Lin Yuan, but now that Li Zhong said that, it meant that he might have done all the preparations. Once there was someone who didn't listen to him and wanted to make trouble, Li Zhong might come to their door before they could fight. Although the expressions of the people around him changed several times, no one stood up to refute. The corners of Li Zhong's mouth curled up slightly, and a fleeting smile flashed across his face. Then, he continued, "The second thing is that some time ago, we caught a group of special undead during an operation to eliminate the Resurrection Society." Special immortals? Luo Su tilted his head, and a hint of doubt flashed across his eyes. Some time ago, the Sky Demon had used the elixir of immortality to create chaos in the Northern Frontier. Even his biggest competitor, Shi Dong, had died because of the elixir of immortality. However, since then, the Sky Demon's forces in the Northern Frontier had been damaged one after another. He could only curl up in the Hengduan Mountains and struggle at death's door. He could no longer pose a threat to the Northern Frontier. During this period of time, apart from preparing for war, the Northern Frontier was mainly fighting against the Northern Restoration Society, apart from the occasional small skirmishes with the Sky Demon Army and the Frost Mirror Barbarian. Luo Su subconsciously frowned when he heard the term undying out of the blue. "Don't be nervous, Commander Luo. The immortals mentioned here are not the immortals created by the Sky Demon, but some monsters that have the appearance of humans but can't be killed." Li Zhong cleared his throat and said with a solemn expression, "According to the information in my hands, when these immortals were captured, they had been killed more than 10 times in the operation to wipe out the Northern Restoration Society. However, after each death, they can quickly revive. Even if they are cut into pieces, they will not die. Instead, from one of the pieces of flesh, they will once again grow into a complete body." As his voice fell, the expressions of all the generals in the Northern Frontier changed. As existences who galloped on the battlefield, they were never afraid of strong enemies. However, in the face of disgusting things, even they had to retreat. For example, these unkillable things were one of them. No matter how strong these immortals were, as long as there was no way to kill them, they could only go around them. Not every soldier had a big heart that had been tempered thousands of times. There was a limit to what they could accept. Once they encountered this kind of monster that couldn't be killed even if they were cut into pieces, their morale would quickly collapse. At that time, it was completely unpredictable what would happen. In order to deal with the immortals, I have tried many ways. In addition to physical means such as chopping, hacking, and piercing the heart with thousands of arrows, I have also invited some Heaven Dipper realm cultivators to use various techniques to attack them. However, the result, even if these immortals are burned to ashes, they can recover again. It's just that the recovery time of the immortals is different depending on the injury. If they are burned to ashes, it will take at least 3 days to recover. In addition to this kind of creepy immortal power, these immortals look almost no different from us humans. If it weren't for the operation to wipe out the Northern Restoration Society, we might not have been able to discover the existence of these immortals. This is because the other party's appearance, intelligence, and other aspects are no different from ordinary humans. For the time being, we are not sure if the existence of the immortals has anything to do with the Sky Demon. However, the waters of the Northern Restoration Society are definitely much deeper than we previously thought. However, there is good news. So far, we have intercepted and killed nearly 20,000 members of the Northern Restoration Society. Most of the members of the Northern Restoration Society are ordinary people. So far, we have only discovered about 20 immortals. Li Zhong crossed his arms in front of his chest and said with a cold expression, "The reason why I called you all here is simply that I can't think of a way to deal with the immortals. However, if you all brainstorm together, perhaps there will be some gains." The expressions of everyone in the commander's tent changed several times. They all looked at each other, but no one spoke. The oppressive atmosphere was maintained for a full incense's time. Zhang Shuzhu stretched out his hand and gently knocked on the table. After attracting everyone's attention, he said in an almost joking tone, "You should know that the work of attacking the Northern Restoration Society went smoothly because many of my agents infiltrated the Northern Restoration Society and provided a lot of information for the cleanup work. However, according to the information of my agents, this time, we almost caught the Northern Restoration Society's president." As soon as his voice fell, the expressions of everyone, including Li Zhong, changed. Almost caught the Northern Restoration Society's president? This was not good news. Therefore, we suspect that the Northern Restoration Society's president has a way to turn ordinary people into immortals. Moreover, this guy is very cunning. The place where he is very likely to have a large number of secret mechanisms. According to our method of pulling out nails, we may never catch the Northern Restoration Society's president. If we can't catch the Northern Restoration Society's president, then the other party may create more immortals. When the number of immortals reaches a certain level, our offensive and defensive roles may be switched. Zhang Shuzhu's expression was tense. He said in a deep voice, "So now we only have two paths. Either we expose a flaw to lure the Northern Restoration Society's president into the battlefield we have prepared to capture him, or we study the weaknesses of these immortals as soon as possible to prepare for the decisive battle soon." Chapter 698. The opponent is an unkillable monster. What weakness can it have? Zhao Guangchong frowned slightly and subconsciously opened his mouth to reply. As the leader of the Blackwater Army, Zhao Guangchong was best at breaking through enemy lines. Previously, when he fought against Shuel Yao Knight, he dared to take the lead and charge into the enemy's formation. Therefore, as long as an opponent appeared in front of him, he would not panic. However, if his opponent was a monster that he could not kill no matter how hard he tried, that would be his blind spot. "If you can't kill it, can you trap it?" Qin Yu, who was also from the Blackwater Army, also frowned and gave a suggestion. "I'm afraid it's very difficult." Li Zhong shook his head with a wry smile and said in a low voice, "I said before that if it wasn't a coincidence and we didn't intend to leave them alive, we wouldn't even be able to tell the difference between these monsters and ordinary people. This also means that the opponent also has the ability to cultivate, and is even not inferior to human intelligence. But compared to us, they have a special trait called immortality. Therefore, it is very difficult to capture beasts and the like. I mean, if we use something like a ballista, can we directly nail them to the ground?" Qin Yu asked again. Clap. Clap. Li Zhong clapped his hands lightly twice. Soon, the soldiers outside the tent came in with a young man in tattered clothes. But from the outside, it was almost impossible to distinguish the original color and style of the clothes. Cuts, tears, and bloodstains could be seen everywhere. If one only looked at the clothes, it would be impossible to imagine that the owner of the clothes was still alive in this world. Even if it were a demon beast with a tyrannical body to bear such injuries, it would probably die on the spot. But the young man wearing the clothes, other than his face being covered in dust and looking somewhat disheveled, there was not a single wound on his body. Only the 3 layers of spirit-binding shackles on his body told everyone in the tent that although this young man looked relatively quiet, he was in fact a ruthless character. Li Zhong nodded to the soldiers escorting the young man and slowly got up from the main seat. Clang! The long sword at his waist was unsheathed. The speed of the sword was extremely fast. In the blink of an eye, the white light had already pierced through the young man's waist. Soon after, Li Zhong slowly released his right hand, allowing the long sword to remain in the young man's body. What happened next almost made everyone's eyes widen. The wound on the young man's body kept wriggling. Pieces of flesh and blood transformed into tentacles, twisting and intertwining with each other. Meanwhile, the long sword was pushed out bit by the regenerating force, and finally fell to the ground with a loud clang. The wound on the young man's abdomen had completely healed. Not even a scar could be seen. Only the blood flowing out proved that Li Zhong's sword had indeed pierced into his abdomen. I've already tried. Li Zhong sighed softly and said helplessly, when these guys heal their wounds, their flesh and blood will burst with a terrifying repulsive force. I've had Senior Zhou Jianxian try it and let him keep holding the sword to suppress it, but the sword was still pushed out by this force. This also means that, even if someone below the celestial strength realm is suppressed by human strength, there is no way anyone below the celestial strength realm would be able to resist this strange force. Do you think those large ballistae would be able to do it if even Senior Zhou, who is at the peak of the airborne realm, couldn't do it? As soon as he finished speaking, the commander's tent fell into a dead silence again. Despite being at the pinnacle of the airborne realm being far inferior to those at the celestial strength realm, they were still able to easily take on the incoming ballista bolts. They were even able to crush the bolts that were moving at high speeds with their bare hands. If such a force could not suppress the young man, how could the ballistae do it? Moreover, this young man had 3 layers of spirit-binding shackles on his body, but it was only his cultivation that was suppressed. That strange undying power was not affected at all. Therefore, the special metal that was used to suppress cultivators was not effective at all. The young man slowly raised his head and sneered at Li Zhong, who was standing in front of him, and said in a cold voice, "Mortal, I am an existence blessed by the Supreme God. Unless my God wants to take my life, you mortals will never be able to kill me. So, there is nothing we can do about these immortals?" Luo Su asked with a gloomy face. Li Zhong was silent for a moment and said with a bitter smile, "If Lord Dragon King is here, it may be easy to get rid of these so-called immortals. But maybe it is as he said, we are just mortals, and it is pardonable that we can't kill these monsters." At this point, Li Zhong paused, took a deep breath, and continued, "So, what I mean is that the northern frontier fully shrink the defense line and temporarily cede some territory to the Northern Restoration Society. Everything will wait for Lord Dragon King to come back and make the decision. Before that, the most important thing is to guard against the Sky Demon army that may fight with us at any time." Tisk, Zhao Guangchong frowned without hiding it and said in a muffled voice, "That is impossible. The Northern Restoration Society has been continuously suppressed by us during this period of time, and they are already very weak. At this time, we don't chase after them and even give them time to breathe. This kind of thinking is tantamount to suicide. Then what if we encounter these unkillable monsters again?" Li Zhong narrowed his eyes slightly and turned his head to glare at Zhao Guangchong, his face slightly gloomy. Zhao Guangchong stood up, and his aura was not inferior to Li Zhong's. He growled, "Although these guys can't be killed, their strength is just so. If we encounter them again, we will find an opportunity to capture them." Qin Yu stretched out his hand and pulled Zhao Guangchong's sleeve, coughing softly twice. This colleague of his was good at everything, but his brain was a little one-track minded. Rather than saying that he was simple and straightforward, it was better to say that this guy believed in using force to solve problems, and rarely used his brain. But at this time, in front of so many northern frontier bosses, he slammed the table and challenged the king of the northern frontier. Did he think that he would not die? Ha! After Li Zhong and Zhao Guangcheng looked at each other for a moment, they suddenly chuckled. Qin Yu subconsciously felt a chill on his back. He didn't know why, but he always felt that Li Zhong's act today was purely for show. Perhaps this guy had already dug a big hole and was just waiting for them to jump into it. Still too young, Qin Yu glanced at the people around her who were looking down at their noses and sighed in her heart. Obviously, Li Zhong was going to leave the mess to his subordinates to deal with. Everyone knew this, so they kept silent. However, when it came to Zhao Guangcheng, the silly guy, he dared to slap the table and challenge Li Zhong. Perhaps the undead would fall on the Blackwater army soon. Chapter 699. Since Zhao Yingzheng is so confident, then I'll have to trouble Zhao Yingzheng to capture these immortals. Li Zhong reached out and patted the non-existent dust on his hands, a faint smile on his face, and said, "From now on, Zhao Yingzheng will be separated from the Blackwater Army's fighting sequence. All frontline affairs will have nothing to do with Zhao Yingzheng. You will lead your troops and be responsible for capturing the discovered immortals, as well as the leader of the Northern Restoration Society who is absconding. If there are any problems during this period, I will hold you responsible." Zhao Guangcheng's breathing slightly stagnated. Although he didn't like to use his brain very much, this didn't mean that he was really stupid. So after Li Zhong spoke, he already realized that Li Zhong was completely planning to throw the trouble out, and he just happened to step on a mine. What? Didn't Zhao Yingzheng say it was very easy before? Can't you just capture the immortals if you encounter them? Li Zhong curled the corner of his mouth and directly opened his mouth to block Zhao Guangcheng's mouth, and said in a strange tone, "Of course, if Zhao Yingzheng is not willing to take responsibility for this matter, I will not force you. But from today onwards, all actions against the Northern Restoration Society will be temporarily suspended in the northern frontier. We will wait for Dragon King to return before we make further plans. I'll take this job." Zhao Guangcheng's blood was boiling at this moment, and he couldn't care less about the trouble at all, and directly growled. Some time ago, he was ordered by Lin Yuan to transfer a group of Blackwater army to listen to Lei Qiusheng's command. Now that Lei Qiusheng was in closed-door training, the command of this team completely fell into his hands, and naturally participated in a series of attack plans against the Northern Restoration Society. Most of the time, the well-equipped Blackwater army was the main force to destroy cities and strongholds. Now that most of the Northern Restoration Society's strongholds had been uprooted, the remaining ones had hidden in the forests near the Hengduan Mountains. If they did not take advantage of the situation now, who knew what other trump cards the Northern Restoration Society would bring out? If the Sky Demon Army attacked the northern frontier, it would be difficult to guarantee that the northern frontier would not be destroyed. If Zhao Guangcheng could figure this out, the others could naturally figure it out as well. The reason why no one brought it up and even allowed Li Zhong to bring up this suicidal suggestion was to find someone who was not afraid of trouble to take the blame. If no one said anything, then the person in charge would be decided by drawing lots. That's all. Meeting adjourned. Having found a suitable person to be in charge, Li Zhong was clearly much more relaxed. He waved his hand lightly and walked out of the commander's tent, as if the person with the bitter smile from before was not him. Yi Bailin was the second to get up. When he passed by Zhao Guangcheng, he looked like he wanted to say something but hesitated. In the end, he did not say a single word. He just sighed softly, reached out and patted Zhao Guangcheng's shoulder, and was the second to leave the commander's tent. After that, it was Luo Su, Zhang Shuzhu, and a group of generals. Finally, it was the people in charge of the other offices in the northern frontier. These people seemed to have discussed it in advance. They all walked in front of Zhao Guangcheng, sighed softly, and then reached out and patted Zhao Guangcheng's shoulder as if to encourage him. However, Zhao Guangcheng saw that many people were trying hard to hold back their laughter, and even their faces were slightly red. This was especially true for Gao Buzhan. This person almost had the word happy written on his face. But thinking about it, these immortals themselves were not weak cultivators. Coupled with the power of immortality, they cooperated with a certain battle formation. Ordinary troops really had no way to deal with them. Except for the Devil Beast army that could not be seen, only the Blackwater army and the Fallen Star army could be a match for them. The current Blackwater army had no mission for the time being. They were all split up to assist in various departments. Zhao Guangchong and Qin Yu, who had nothing to do, were also nominally under Lei Qiusheng's command. In today's meeting, Lei Qiusheng did not participate at all. Even Li Zhong could not directly dispatch his subordinates without Lei Qiusheng's permission. Therefore, if Zhao Guangchong and Qin Yu were thick-skinned and did not accept the task, this task would definitely be carried out by the Fallen Star army. Drawing lots was said to be fair and just, but everyone was a cultivator. Who did not know how to play tricks? Playing tricks? Out of everyone present, who would be able to outplay Li Zhong, this old fox? The last to get up was Qin Yu. He also sighed, but before he could reach out his hand, Zhao Guangchong's threatening voice had already sounded, "Old Qin, if you take this down, don't blame me for turning my back on you. I'll make you participate in the operation to exterminate the Resurrection Society with a pig head tomorrow. You know, I'm afraid I'll be very idle in the short term." The immortals were not cabbages on the roadside. Except for the ones caught this time, there might not be more than 100 immortals in the entire Resurrection Society. Obviously, it was not impossible to transform ordinary humans into immortals, but it was either expensive or the conditions were very harsh. Therefore, the proportion of immortals in the Resurrection Society might not be large. He was a general who had been kicked out of the fighting order. He might really be idle for a long time. A tense and exciting fight with Qin Yu would not affect him much at all. But during this period of time, the task was still heavy and the time was tight. Except for some special existences, everyone in the northern frontier who could move had to participate in the operation to exterminate the Resurrection Society. Therefore, Qin Yu would definitely have to go out tomorrow. If he appeared in front of his subordinates with a pig head, Qin Yu would not be able to stand up in the Blackwater army. Qin Yu's expression changed. He put down his right hand that was ready to move and said with a smile, "Old Zhao, am I that kind of person? Would I laugh at you like they did because you didn't think it through and made a mistake? Don't you think your words are too hurtful to me?" Zhao Guangchong curled his lips suspiciously and said in a deep voice, "You didn't speak before, and you secretly pulled the corner of my clothes. Did you already guess that the king of the northern frontier was going to do this? Good boy, you don't talk about martial ethics. You seem to be a tiger." Qin Yu scolded in a low voice. He gritted his teeth and said, "The immortals are a big trouble. You can suppress them for a while with these guys under you, but how can you prove that the plan to capture the immortals is not the plan of the Resurrection Society's president who is still elusive? If you want to supervise them closely, you are not just a little bit better. When you can't hold on anymore, won't I have to leave to help you?" Speaking of this, Qin Yu narrowed his eyes and said hatefully, "The king of the northern frontier originally wanted the Fallen Star army to do this. I thought the Blackwater army had escaped this time, but I didn't expect you to suddenly hit the table. You really made us suffer." "Ah, this," Zhao Guangchong once again entered the state of Abba Abba. Chapter 700. The Endless Sea, the Deep Sea Region, the Willowstone Sea. Why do I feel uneasy? Lin Yuan was sitting cross-legged, refining his demonic power. His eyes were filled with confusion. So far, no trouble had come to the West Sea Dragon Palace. It seemed that in order to cover up the news of the aberrant and also to hide the fact that the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas was ready to retreat, the Dragon Palace of the West Sea did not mention anything about the evil dragon pool. Even as far as Lin Yuan knew, the West Sea Dragon Palace had specially transferred 3 of the 9 sons of the Dragon Clan to directly destroy the Red Crab Clan, which was involved in this matter, to ensure that the matter of Dragon Lake would rot in their stomachs. After all the survivors of the entire evil dragon pool had become aberrants. Only Lin Yuan was missing. Even the aberrant who created this tragedy had not been found out. However, as a level 8 demonic beast of the Mountain Lord realm and the bloodline of the Water Dragon, Lin Yuan was sure that he was not being paranoid. Even without the help of the system, Lin Yuan was the divine king of the Northern Frontier Divine System, the pioneer of the underworld in the Tianwu continent, and the incarnation of the Nether River. Therefore, if he felt uneasy, there must be something wrong. Could it be the Northern Frontier? Lin Yuan narrowed his eyes and murmured. If there was nothing wrong with him, it could only be the Northern Frontier. However, he could not figure out what kind of trouble the Northern Frontier could have. Before he left, not only did he leave behind a large amount of Netherworld Realm black water for Li Zhong, he even summoned existences in the Wisdom Realm or the Mountain Lord Realm. Their combat power was not considered strong, but when combined with the Netherworld River's unkillable characteristics, they were definitely a force that could stand shoulder to shoulder with any army in the world. After all, the Tianwu continent was very different from the Endless Sea. In the Tianwu continent, whether it was a demonic beast of the Demonic King realm or a Dao Initiation realm cultivator, once they broke through, they had to report to the Heavenly Gate. Otherwise, they would be the enemy of the entire cultivation world. Therefore, the combat power Lin Yuan left behind was sufficient. He even created the god of war, Batu, to be the true dragon son of heaven. With such strength, even if the Shenwu dynasty at its peak came, Lin Yuan might have the audacity to challenge it directly. Father, we have completed the first refinement. We are here to report to you. Soon, the 4 demonic beast clans appeared in Lin Yuan's consciousness. Although they did not meet, Lin Yuan could check the status of these demonic beasts through the system panel. The one who spoke was Flood Dragon 1, the leader of the 4 demonic beast clans. Although the 4 demonic beast clans were essentially the same, as the first demonic beast clans to speak to Lin Yuan, Flood Dragon 1 received special treatment. For example, he was chosen by Lin Yuan to be a holy disciple. This meant that once Lin Yuan needed him, he could give up everything and allow Lin Yuan's divine sense to descend on his body and control his every move. The other 3 demonic beast clans were Flood Dragon 2, Flood Dragon 3, and Flood Dragon younger sister. It was not that Lin Yuan felt that naming was troublesome, but although these demonic beast clans were personally summoned by him, they were still weak chickens. Everyone knew that weak chickens did not deserve to have names. Most of the time, they were just called by their code names. Not bad. Heroes should enjoy praise and honor. As my brave warrior, you will receive everything you deserve for your efforts. Now, enjoy the fruits of victory. Lin Yuan nodded at Flood Dragon 1. The large number of items piled up beside him were emitting a golden radiance. As the items disappeared one by one, Lin Yuan's incense power on his system panel increased. When it was almost enough, Lin Yuan willed it and golden incense power gushed out and poured directly into the 4 demonic beast clans in front of him. Demonic beast clans information, name, Flood Dragon 1 race, grayscaled Flood Dragon person, low-level species, type, subhuman level, upper tier 1 class, spear warrior talents, underwater breathing, learning, optical camouflage skills, seawater essence, tide call, agony, devour, lunge, explosive seed, spear warrior form specialties, advanced swimming, flood dragon person scaly armor, short flight, intermediate regeneration physique, 9, 5, resistance comparable to turtles, strength, 11, strength not inferior to elephants, agility, 6, 4/10/5, land, water, sky, spirit, 4, low-level intelligence, has the potential to become a spellcaster. 2000 incense power had brought about an improvement on Flood Dragon 1's system panel. In terms of numbers, Flood Dragon 1's attributes didn't seem to have changed much. However, Lin Yuan was still shocked when he looked at Flood Dragon 1 in front of him. Although he didn't know how the attribute panel of the clan tribe was converted, Lin Yuan could be sure at the moment that Zhao Yi's strength at the moment was probably not inferior to the second level of the wisdom state, or even stronger and more resistant to attacks. It hadn't been that long. According to the game system, Flood Dragon 1 had risen from level 1 to level 2 at most. However, the improvement in strength made even Lin Yuan feel inferior. Of course, if Lin Yuan were to evaluate it, this deal was still a huge loss. Summoning a demonic beast clans cost 2,541 incense power and upgrading from level 1 to level 2 required 2,000 incense power. The strength that was exchanged for these numbers could be said to be shockingly low. If it was a creature that Lin Yuan created through the soldier creation system, spending this amount of incense power would have raised its attributes to a terrifying level. The 4 demonic beasts leveled up one by one. They were all spear warriors and their attributes were similar to Flood Dragon 1's. It was clear that because they were all using spears, the experience gained from different weapons would naturally be different. This was a direction that was worth paying attention to. In the future, when cultivating demonic beasts, he could also test the cooperation between different types of soldiers. Father, may I ask what our next step is? Flood Dragon 1 looked at Lin Yuan with a fervent gaze. Temporarily stand by and wait for my next instruction. Lin Yuan glanced at Flood Dragon 1 and calmly replied. Although he didn't know what Flood Dragon 1 had done during this period of time, the 4 demonic beasts had accumulated enough experience to level up. Even if their levels were low and they didn't need much experience, they probably killed a lot. Although the Endless Sea was stronger than the Hengduan mountain range, the ecological balance was still a serious problem. Wantonly killing those ordinary sea monsters would also cause the lobster to be hostile. Lin Yuan didn't want to fight a demonic king realm monster, at least not now. Therefore, he could only pacify the demonic beasts and have them temporarily stand by. Yes. Great Father. Flood Dragon 1 replied loudly again with a fervent expression on his face. He took the initiative to cut off the connection with Lin Yuan. You're tuning into the Blissful Bookshelf YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.